Thank you for coming. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. I know you have a busy schedule and everything going on, and I appreciate you making that trip out here to talk to me.
Glad to be here.
All right, awesome. So we're just going to jump right in. I just kind of want to know about childhood and how you grew up. Where did you grow up?
So I was born in Massachusetts. My mom had me when she was 15. I grew up there for a little bit of time. My mom had me when she was 15. She was homeless, so pretty much a rough start. So I want to start off by saying that that my family was full of addicts and alcoholics.
Okay.
And so my mom, she had me when she was 15. She was homeless because her stepdad had been sexually abusing her, which is important in my story as well, a little bit later. So my mom was already addicted to drugs, when she had me. Pretty much alcohol and cocaine, right? My grandfather, he was in the Vietnam War, and he was just really twisted. Like they would keep padlocks on the cabinets. Like you couldn't just eat food.
Wow.
Because there's like so many of us, and he had a shower in the basement of his house. He didn't want to like pay for running like regular hot water, so he had this like cement shower in the bottom of his house, and he would like let us shower like once a week, and all the girls would go down together. All the boys would go down together.
Wow.
It was just really
strange.
bizarre, right?
Yeah.
Like really bizarre, really controlling, really.
And where was this at?
In Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And he would also he was just so crazy. Like if you ate an apple and you like threw out the peel, he would like pull it out of the trash can and like later make porridge with it. Like
what?
it was so bizarre. It was just
So I do have a question
mm-hmm.
about how you learned about your mom's abuse with
She told me.
She did. She was very open about it.
My mom used me like you would a friend, right? She would drink,
Mm-hmm.
wake me up in the middle of the night and like pull me into bed with her. A lot of times it would be after she just had sex with a man, and the man would leave, and she'd be crying, and she would pull me into bed, and she'd be like, just cry about it.
Okay. And she would tell you about
Yeah.
her experiences?
Yeah.
Okay. And you were how old?
The earliest I can remember her doing that, like I said, was probably like 6 or 7.
Wow.
Yeah. I was also, one of the oldest by the time we, were staying down in Massachusetts with my grandparents, of the cousins and my brother, right? So I was responsible a lot to like take care of everybody.
Okay.
Even my mom. So I kind of played that role. If she was emotionally unstable or depressed or drinking, she would, cry to me,
Yeah.
If she needed stuff done, she would ask me to do it. So I always felt kind of responsible for her.
So needless to say, you grew up really fast.
Really fast.
Really fast.
Yeah,
Okay.
really
So
fast.
with mom having this past with grandpa, was she not afraid to leave you with him when you were growing up?
So my mom, she would constantly say to me, like, if he ever does this, tell me. If he ever does that, tell me. I'll kill him, or I'll, like,
Yeah.
She would get really drunk. And I remember one time, in like a very vivid memory is my grandfather was like, oh, you need to put lotion on your legs. And he was like rubbing lotion on my legs. And as a little kid, you're like uncomfortable, but you're going to, you know what I mean? You're going to.
Yeah, it's grandpa,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, I get it.
And so she had walked in on him doing that, and she hit him in the head with a clothes iron.
Oh, wow.
Like in a drunken rage. But she still left me there.
Yeah, wow.
And he was really twisted in the sense, like, he had these piles of bricks in the backyard, and he would have us all move, all the kids. Like, he didn't want us to just play, right? We'd move bricks. Like, pick up a brick, move it 10 feet, and put it down and build, move the pile, like the square pile of bricks, I'm sorry.
Just create another pile.
Yeah, he would give us these little tiny like paint scrapers to scrape the side of his house all day long in the heat,
Wow.
just bizarre stuff.
How many kids were there with you?
And so it was like me, my brother, my cousin Jeremy, and then my 4 other cousins. So like,
Okay.
yeah, like
Got it. And you said the oldest, or you were one of the
second
oldest?
to the oldest.
Okay.
My cousin Jill was the oldest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And a lot older or close
No,
in
just
age?
a couple years older. And then there was also 2. They were technically my aunt and uncle from my grandmother's sister, but they had been removed from her care because she was like abusing them, putting cigarette butts out on them, all kinds of crazy stuff. So
Wow.
they also were living there, and we called them auntie and uncle, but they were technically like my great cousins. And it was pretty horrible because they both had like mental illnesses and challenges, and they would be
Like what kind of like schizophrenia
so
or
like
stuff like that, or
my Tanya, her name was Tanya. She was probably like, I can remember being 16, like playing with baby dolls, you know, and she was also being molested by my grandfather, so she would molest us, do just like weird,
Wow.
let's play house, let's do this,
Yeah.
and same thing with pretty much everybody in my family.
So she was 16, you were 6 at the time, roughly.
This probably around this time, like 8, maybe
Okay.
8 or 9, 3rd grade. Yeah.
And when you say she would get molested and then molest you, meaning you yourself or the other siblings and
Me,
cousins?
myself.
You yourself.
All of us together.
Wow.
It'd be like play house, do this, play doctor, like weird stuff like that, And I think with like incest, if that's what that's called, it's bizarre, but it becomes like, if that's all you know when you grow up, it's like almost like normal. Like it wasn't unnormal for me to like have my uncle slide in the bed next to me and like do stuff. I would just lay there and pretend I'm sleeping, like it wasn't like,
Wow.
it was just something that became like, you just did it. It was like, you just laid there and
You didn't think about saying anything about it or
Well, who
anything
do
at
you
that
tell?
time, right? I mean, yeah, you're young, you don't know. You like you said, you think it's almost a normal thing that's
who do you
supposed to
tell?
occur.
Everybody's doing that, and it's your family's just like so twisted. Who do you really tell?
Wow. Yeah.
I used to have thoughts of like, if my dad was here, if my dad knew, that was really hard because I knew my dad loved me and he was like normal,
Yeah.
and he didn't know where I was, and I knew that.
He had no idea where you guys were, and
No.
you had no idea where he was. Okay.
No.
And did you ever get back in touch with him? You
I did.
Okay. Not until later, though.
Not until later. I would say probably when I was about 11.
Okay.
He, my mom had moved. My mom, and that's another thing. Constant moving, just constant moving. I remember my 5th grade year of school. I went to like 12 different schools.
Wow.
My mom would burn bridges, get in trouble, and we just in the middle of the night. It wouldn't be like a normal pack up your house. It just move with whatever you had, like your
Fire
backpack.
sale. We got to go.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So that kind of does bring me back a little bit to what you were talking about growing up at your grandparents'. You said, who do you tell? When you went to school, did you ever think about maybe reaching out to a counselor, teacher, principal? Nothing? No?
No, and I think also I was just always changing schools a lot. I didn't think to tell anybody there. And there was also always this thing said in my family, like, you don't want to get taken by CPS. You don't, like, it was like a looming thing. So like, for example, if my mom wasn't home for a week, she like trained us, like, you don't answer the phone and say, no, my mom's not here. Right.
Yeah.
Even though I'd be there by myself for a long period of time, because you'll get snatched by CPS. Right. It was always that kind of like looming.
And also there's the element of you're kind of surrounded by people who are going through the same thing as you. And it's like, even though you're all going through it, you don't want to be taken from those others either, right?
Right. That's
Wow.
all you know. And there's this like heavy burden of, my mom always seemed so mentally unstable. Like, was I going to do that one thing? I always tried to do everything right for her and take care of her. And like, I was always worried about her. Right. And so in my mind, it's like if I tell on somebody and they take me for my mom, then who's going to care for my mom? Or that might just break my mom, right?
Yeah.
A lot of heavy
That's
responsibility and
lot of,
burden for a
yeah.
kid.
I
You know what
was
I mean?
just about to say that's a lot for a child to bear.
Yeah.
That's a lot on your shoulders for sure. Are you okay with talking about the abuse that did occur at
Yeah.
that time?
Yeah.
I mean, what were you having to endure at that time?
So for my grandfather, it was a lot of like weird stuff, like let me rub lotion on your legs and be like a little touch here on the private area, a little touch there.
Oh man.
He would make us. I told you about the shower in the summertime. He would make us bathe. He had like an above ground swimming pool,
Okay.
and like he'd make you get naked, and like wash you up. Stuff that's like at the time, at this age, like if somebody did that to my child, I would kill them, right? But at the time, it's like, is this that unnormal? Is it grandpa washing me up? You know what I mean? Like,
wow.
And if I say anything, what is that going to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to send my mom over the edge, and then, so it was just a lot of stuff like that. Or if we were like driving in the car, and he always liked to take me out of everybody, he'd be like, Crystal, he would go to this donut place and he would get all the stale donuts to bring home. And he'd always take me on that trip with him. And
Yeah.
it'd always be like, let me hold your hand. And he'd like place my hand on his
Man.
crotch area or whatever, And it was just like uncomfortable and weird, but at the same time, it's like, you don't, you don't know any
When
better.
you're going through it at a young age that you feel like it's something that's supposed to happen, even if you feel that it's wrong, like you said, you're bearing this thought of my entire life is gonna change if I say the wrong thing, because right, like you said, that's absolutely horrible. And Grandpa wasn't the only one abusing you, though,
No.
right?
Yeah.
So
My mom's brother, his name was Pete. He was, let's say when I was like 9, he was probably in high school, and so he was on the younger side. But he would also do the same thing, like lay in bed with me at night. Anything under the blankets, like sitting and watching TV. Throw a blanket over you and just do touch you, and you just lay there and act like it's not happening.
man.
My Uncle Wayne, like just, pretty much everybody in my family, even down to like me and my little cousins, right? Because that's happening to us, and then we're doing it with each other on the side, because like that's the game that we knew how to play,
Wow. And isn't that crazy how those
So
things
crazy.
translate to I mean, you're at such a young age, you're so impressionable that you think, oh, hey, they're doing it, so let's
I remember
do this.
doing it to other kids that weren't in my family. I would have sleepovers or get invited to stay at somebody else's house, and I would, do the same thing to other kids, with them, like, oh, let's do this.
But at that point, you think this is what kids do, right? I mean, okay. So how long did you live at your grandparents? All like growing up, all through your.
It was always like the home base,
Okay.
right? My mom got involved with like some, I think they're called like Los Solitos or something like that. It's like a gang on the East Coast. My mom was like involved with that.
Okay.
And she was just constantly moving, right?
When you say involved, was she part of the gang, or was she just with somebody that was in the gang?
With people that were in the gang,
Okay.
right? Like she would just always be surrounded by all these people, parties, stuff like that. If we got an apartment, they'd be full of,
Gang members?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So how old were you during this time?
Still like 3rd, 4th grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you remember like seeing these
Oh, yeah.
gang members.
Yeah.
Did it resonate with you then that these are dangerous people, or was it like these are just my mom's friends?
Yeah, I wanted to be like them. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I can remember being hanging out with their daughters and their sons and playing, reggae music and learning how to dance all sexual and drinking. They would have these keg parties, and I would sit at the keg and pump the keg for people. Wow. And they'd give me money, and that's how I got attention too, being a little kid at a party. Oh, look how cute she is, oh, she's funny, so I fed on that kind of attention that I wasn't getting elsewhere, so I'd always want to go with my mom.
Yeah.
And plus I didn't want to be left with my grandparents, so it got to a point where my mom would I can remember going to bars, with my mom. Mm-hmm. Being young, sitting at the bar, my mom drank and played pool, and going to all those parties. But anyway, she was involved with all those people and just burning a lot of bridges. And I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I just know we moved a lot. But the one stable thing that we had to always go back to was my grandparents' house.
Got it.
She could always drop us off there.
Okay, that makes sense. When your mom was hanging around with these people, were you ever like a witness to violence or anything that happened during those times, or was
a lot of like domestic violence? A lot of fights for sure. Mm-hmm. Another thing is my mom would have these boyfriends, that would beat her ass,
in front of you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they would a lot of times. Like a typical night at a house, if I was staying with my mom, would be like everybody there playing dice, mm-hmm. everybody drinking and doing drugs, and just you witness all kinds of things, you know, all kinds of violence, for sure. And I also would witness violence at my grandma and grandpa's house,
What's the worst you've ever seen happen to your mom?
I saw my mom got thrown out of a moving vehicle while I was in the car with her.
Oh, jeez.
She had to be hospitalized. Yeah.
And I mean, you're sitting in the car still. Your mom's mm-hmm. no longer in the car. What goes through your head at that age? Do you remember?
I remember just screaming at the top of my lungs, being scared. My brother was in the car with us. I don't even remember the guy's name at the time. And he just turned around and he said, "Shut the fuck up."
Wow.
So I remember holding my little brother, and he pulled over to the side of the road. He pulled over to the side of the road and picked my mom up. I remember her front teeth. When she had hit the pavement, her front teeth went through her bottom lip right here.
Jeez. And
it was just split wide open. And she, instead of going to the hospital, we went back to the apartment, and then she ended up going to the hospital saying she was in a car accident. I remember, yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
And she just moved around to different boyfriends that did the mm-hmm. same thing to her.
Yep. Yep.
And all along, you guys were a witness to this mm-hmm. growing up. Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And there was also a lot of if she couldn't move into her own place, we would go stay. Excuse me. We would go stay with her brother or her other sister. My mom had 7 brothers and sisters.
Okay.
Right. So we would go stay with them, and it was the same story, just different place. Everybody drinking, constant,
Yeah.
Constant just chaos, or they would leave me and my older cousin with all the little kids,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And mom was alcoholic?
My mom was definitely an alcoholic, and at that time she was using crack and cocaine.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's different stages of my mom's addiction that kind of lead into mine. And she's changed drugs. Mm-hmm. She's still in active addiction today. So
really,
yeah.
You have a close connection with her at all?
We've been through a lot, together.
Mm-hmm.
She's on the East Coast, and I live out here, so my communication with her is probably once every couple weeks or so.
Okay.
I hadn't seen her in about 9 years, but I saw her this January.
Is she homeless?
No.
Dealing with it? No.
No. Okay. She's learned how to function.
Wow.
And also a lot of people in my family, we might have moved around a lot, but she always would keep a job. She would just drink all night, party, but she always went to work.
Okay.
My grandmother, for instance, was a school bus driver. Mm-hmm. She would drink all night long, and yell and be crazy, and then wake up every morning and drive the kids to school. Even she drove me to school on the school bus.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
What did mom do?
My mom has always been, she would do odd jobs, but her main thing was housekeeping.
Okay.
So, and she was also like a workaholic. So if my mom was ever doing something that was like where we were remotely stable, she would work like 60, 70-hour weeks, you know.
Yeah.
And she got good positions. Like she'd be like the manager of like, you know, the big fancy Radisson Inns or, you know,
Yeah.
5-star hotels, you know. And she would be like the head manager where she did all the housekeeping,
And
all
she
that
would just
stuff.
hide her addiction from
Mm-hmm.
everybody but you guys, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
So obviously this kind of leads to you wanting to experiment, or how did that whole process begin?
So my mom met this man named, his name was John, and they got married.
Okay.
And he was a very violent man. Anyway, there was a time where I was rollerblading, right? This is crazy. I was rollerblading and he was like yelling at me to come in the house. Sometimes he would like lock us out of the house if we didn't get in on time. He's yelling at me to come at the house and he just grabbed me like, come here, you know?
Yeah.
And when he did that, I fell on the ground and I had broken my arm in 2 places. They took me to the hospital and they had to reset my arm. And I think I was like 10 at that time.
Yeah.
And it was a really painful experience, and they gave me pain medication. I can remember taking that pain pill at the hospital. Like they gave me morphine, and then they
Yeah.
sent me home with medication. I remember taking that and just feeling like, wow, this is how I'm supposed to feel. Like I didn't have anxiety. I didn't have,
At
you know,
10 years old.
yeah.
Wow.
And I just felt like good. I felt like, you know, I didn't feel sad. I just felt good, you know. I also dealt with a lot of bullying when I was a kid. So, like, every time I moved to a new place, I would experience bullies because you know, we would get head lice a lot. My mom cut my hair really short. You know, it was just, like,
Yeah.
so I had, like, social anxiety, you know. So I remember taking that and just feeling like I could talk to anybody. I could do anything. And so I would sneak into my mom's purse and get the medication that they had prescribed for me and take more.
Jeez.
And that was at like 10 years old. Yeah.
Wow.
I remember I was like in the 4th grade.
What medication was it? Do you remember?
Percocet,
Percocet. Wow. Okay. That's a very
oxycodone.
strong medicine to give a 10-year-old.
Yeah. And I had to have surgery on my arm. You know, they reset it.
Yeah.
And the way it was broken was just in a really messed up place. Yeah. So that was my first experience like with opiates. And then also, you know, all those parties, seeing my mom go to parties, I would drink, you know, steal my grandma's beer, we would drink it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at a young age, I remember feeling like, and plus I saw my mom do it all the time. She obviously like enjoyed doing that. It made her feel better. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Was your mom taking pills also?
At that time, no.
No. Okay.
No, not at that time. So she had married that guy, John, and eventually it was time for her to run from him, you know. So first we were in Massachusetts when she married him, and he was running from somebody else. I remember he had like a moving business, and he was like, I don't know why, but we left in the middle of the night and drove to Pennsylvania. And so we ended up driving to Pennsylvania, staying in hotels for a while. Not in school, you know, probably like 6 months just moving from hotel to hotel. And him and my mom eventually split up. And that's how I ended up in Pennsylvania. And I was at that time, it was probably 6th grade.
I know you said he was very violent. Was the violence more towards you guys as kids, or was it more towards mom, or both?
Both.
Both. Okay.
He didn't have kids of his own, you know.
Okay.
I think we just annoyed him. And he also had like a cocaine addiction. I know that for sure because I didn't know it at the time, but I met him again years later, and I was on his like 4th step. He wanted to apologize to me, make amends, you know.
Yeah.
And he had told me that he was really heavily on cocaine at the time. But he would just like lose his temper. I guess being kids, we would annoy him, you know.
Okay.
Throw stuff at us, pinch us, hit us, you know, stuff like that. And when he married my mom, he had only known her maybe a couple months, so we barely knew the guy, you know. And you're getting like told what to do, pinched and all that stuff from somebody you don't know.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
And still at this time, you're wondering where Dad is, right?
Yeah. So at this time, I have my dad's phone number.
Okay.
I've probably seen him since the time we got taken away from him. I've seen him maybe like 2 or 3 times. He's found us on his motorcycle. He would just show up, you know, visit with us for a little bit. I have his phone number, and I would call my dad all the time. My mom would like leave, you know. She would say she was going to work, and she wouldn't come home sometimes. And I would call my dad like, I don't know where my mom is. She hasn't been home for days, and he's all the way in Maine.
Yeah.
And we're all the way in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
You know, and so I would just like cry to him and talk to him, but I didn't have any like physical contact with him, you know.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
So at this time, you're coming up to 11 years old, right? 10, 11 years old. From taking those pills, where did it progress from there?
So, I would say about 6th grade, right? My mom, you know, she at this age, I would be watching my brother a lot, and this is the point where I started to use with my mom. So, before that, it was just like I told you, you know, like sneaking beer here and there. But at this age, my mom would be like, "Oh, I'll buy you a 6-pack of like, you know, those St. Ives special brew like drinks.
Yeah.
If you'll watch your little brother." Because I'm at the age now where I'm like standing up to her, voicing my opinion, complaining.
Yeah.
You're never home. You know, I hate you. Stuff
You're like
like
12,
that.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate you. You're never home. Fighting back to her, you know. And so she wouldn't have to hear me. She'd be like, "Oh, you know, you and your friend," is like my friend Maggie. She'd be like, "Oh, I'll buy you guys a 6-pack and a pack of cigarettes." You know.
Jeez.
My mom taught me how to smoke cigarettes.
Taught you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meaning like she showed you.
She showed me and my friend how to inhale. And yeah, taught us how to smoke.
How old?
That age, 6th grade. Yeah. I remember she would buy me a pack of cigarettes. It cost $2.10. And I'd be smoking in her car, and she'd be like, "Duck down, I don't want anybody to see you." You know, I was like just a little kid.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
You know, and the less my mom was home, the more she was gone, the more I was able to use that against her to be like, you know.
You want something out of it.
Yeah,
right?
like, you know, I wanted my mom to feel guilty, you know what I mean? She would like, I remember she got us this apartment, and it was in like low income housing, and she had met, his name is Harry, who she ended up, you know, staying with all the rest of those years. And she was just never home. He had a son, and she would maybe come home once every 2 weeks. And it was just me and my little brother in this apartment, and she would like bring all of his laundry over and dump the laundry there for me to do his laundry. You know, she just never home, you know. And so that's when I started to meet older guys that lived in the projects, and my house became the house to be at, because I didn't have any parents home, you know. And at that age, I thought it was cool to like, you know, gangsters were cool, rap music was cool, all that stuff was cool. So they like would overrun my house, you know.
And this is still in Boston. Right?
No, this is Pennsylvania.
Oh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said Massachusetts. Okay.
Yeah, we were in Massachusetts, but we ended up going to Pennsylvania.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so it was like every day drinking at my house, partying at my house, because my mom wasn't there, you know.
What part of Pennsylvania?
Right outside of Philadelphia.
Okay.
At this point, it's called Scranton.
Okay.
It's where The Office is filmed. I don't know if you've ever seen that show.
I have. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was there. Yeah. So I remember times in that apartment where the electricity got shut off. I wouldn't have food in the refrigerator, and a lot of the times the friends that I would meet, their moms would care for me in place of my mom, you know.
Yeah.
Like friends' moms would like send food for me to eat, you know, or let me sleep at their house or whatever. But I also still have my little brother, and so it got to
How
a
much
point.
younger is your brother?
He's 2 years, 11 months, almost 3 years.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And I kind of skipped forward at this point. I'd already at this point been kicked out of every public school in that area, right? Because I thought bad was cool, you know. I'd always fight with the teachers, just give everybody a hard time, you
Yeah.
know. So I was going to like a continuation school for troubled teens.
So you weren't a student that was getting good grades. You were
No.
always a rebel, kind of going against the grain. Okay. And I mean, obviously, with your, your upbringing, it would be hard for you to kind of. I mean, it feels to me like it would be hard to have a normal school experience.
I was always put in special education because I was always behind in whatever they were teaching because I was always changing schools and I didn't have
Yeah.
anybody be like do your homework or anything like that. But I always could read really well.
Okay.
And so I would be in these special education classes and I'd feel like, man, I'm in this stuff is so stupid. I shouldn't be here. But my history and my grades would place me there, you know. So it reached a point where also when I was going to continuation school, it was crazy because there were students that lived there, like almost like a juvenile detention facility, and they would go to school during the day downstairs.
Yeah.
And then they would be locked down at night upstairs, right? So that I just want to tell you that it was a crazy school, right? So my surroundings there were like kids that had already been, criminally charged with things,
Yeah.
And my attendance was so bad because in order for me to make sure my brother went to school, his school left after mine would, so I would just skip school and put him on his bus because once again I didn't want CPS.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wouldn't tell anybody the lights weren't on. I wouldn't tell anybody there was no food in the fridge because I didn't want CPS to take me away. That was always this big thing.
There's always
right?
that fear of that. Yeah.
So I can remember, like, there would be sometimes I would go to school maybe once in a month, and plus I didn't care to go to school, I was always really, really, really skinny, and I would go to school and it was always be like full of counselors and social workers, like, are you eating,
Yeah.
do you have an eating disorder, and like making me drink insured drinks, and
Wow.
yeah.
So I'm going to rewind you just a little bit.
Okay.
I know you did mention that you started to use with your mom. When you say you started to use, what were you using at that time with mom?
Well, it was the alcohol.
The alcohol.
And
Okay.
she would give me the alcohol to babysit, and she would say, as long as you're doing it in the house where I know where you are,
Got it.
she was fine with that.
It's like the famous words of every parent that lets their kid do something. I hear that a lot.
Yeah. And it got worse. It was cocaine. I've used cocaine with her.
Wow. At that age?
No, a little bit older.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit older. But mostly alcohol.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you feel like the alcohol was kind of like that gateway to push you into other things?
Yeah, I mean, by the age of 12, I would drink all the time.
Yeah.
Me and my friend Tabitha, all the time I would drink. I'd meet older men to buy me Colt 45, 40s.
Well, the reason why I ask is because I can only imagine they gave you a certain amount of these pills that you liked so much that when they were gone, what was...
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have at that point an addiction like that, right? But I remember trying those pills and stealing them and remember how good they felt, you know?
Okay.
And with the alcohol, it was just like, it was the cool thing to do. Like, how many people's mom can you just...
Yeah,
we'll buy them
exactly.
alcohol and let them drink all day at their house. You know what I mean? So I was constantly surrounded by like older people that that would bring alcohol to the house and party and stuff like that. The real like turning point between like me and my mom where things got really bad was an instance where my mom, it was around the same time. I think I was like 12 years old at this time. My mom had brought home some Jamaican guys from the bar.
Okay.
And she went upstairs with one of them, and like I said, me and my mom kind of grew up together, so we're more like friends. And she would always say like, oh, I couldn't talk to my mom, and I want to be like your friend.
Yeah.
And so she was fine with being like, hey, can you give me a condom, And so I remember bringing her a condom upstairs while she was with this guy, but she left me downstairs, like 4 guys, and I was raped when I was 12 years old.
So she left you downstairs with 4 men that she didn't know? I mean, these are just guys. I mean,
Guys from
she's
the bar.
obviously trying to have a sexual experience with one guy,
Guys
but
from
leaves
a
you
bar.
downstairs with some wow.
Guys from a bar. Yeah.
And they all abuse you?
I think it was like 3 of them. It was bad. I got hurt, I had to get stitches. I was bitten. I was hurt. And I told on my mom,
Yeah.
And so my mom got in trouble for that. And that's when I was taken out of her care, finally,
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a horror. I'm sure it bothers you. I can tell that it's bothering you now talking about it. But that was probably the best thing for you, right? To be taken from your mom.
Yeah, you would think it would be.
Yeah.
I was taken from my mom, and didn't have anywhere to go. So then I'm in like foster homes, group homes, and that I remember staying at the school I told you about.
Yeah.
I remember staying there with the girls that were in trouble. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a shame, but older kids, the experience isn't more like you go to some loving home,
Yeah. Were these men ever held accountable
Yeah.
for what they were?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
a silver lining in there somewhere. I mean, that's got to be something to go through when you're 12 years old. Is this your first sexual experience at that time?
No.
No. Okay. So you were aware of sex and everything at that
growing
time.
up.
Growing up.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
I couldn't even, to be honest, I think I was probably like 11 or 10 when I lost my virginity. I don't,
Was this family related or was this something
no, it
else?
was
Okay.
a boy that I met that was like 17,
Wow.
Sex to me was always like transactional. It was always just like, it wasn't ever something special, or nobody ever told me like you wait for that or anything like that,
Yeah.
And also, and I don't want to leave this out, in that happening to me, I was drinking.
Okay.
I was dancing. Like, remember I
Okay.
told you I like to be the life of the party, right? Get attention. So I remember talking to the police afterwards and them being like, well, how do you know, this or that? Like, because they have to play that role, I guess. With the detectives, they want to like ask you every question and make sure you said no, make sure, like, I don't know, the way that they were asking me made me kind of feel like defensive or whatever. But because I was explaining to them, like, yeah, I was dancing and this and that, and I felt like it was kind of partly my fault in a sense where I like led those people on,
Well, yeah.
I know now,
Victims often feel like the reason why things happen to them, right? I mean, that's a very common thing. Like women who are abused by their husbands blame themselves a lot of times, right? Most sexual assault victims blame themselves. So, I mean, you're 12. How do you how do you possibly navigate through that, right? At that time, so.
And also I had, also at that time, there were some, 2 friends of mine were there when that stuff was happening. And I remember like they told everybody like I was like a slut, I was dancing on the guys, I was doing this, and probably I did, maybe I did, it still
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're 12.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, these are grown men that know better, right?
Right.
I mean, if anything, they should have stepped up and said, "Hey, you shouldn't be doing this. That's what a normal man would do, right? During these situations." So, one thing that stands out though is you said that the police questioned you and said, "How do you know?" What were they talking about?
Like, did I say no?
Okay.
Like, did I say no? Did I say no? I don't touch me, or did I like,
At that point, it doesn't matter. But yes, I mean, it doesn't matter. You're 12.
right?
You know.
And I understand. I
Yeah.
understand that. Then I didn't understand that, and they were kind to me in the sense like they told me they were going to be asking me questions that like maybe a prosecutor would ask me, or
Yeah. It's
stuff
gonna be
like
tough
that.
questions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they were tough, and I was still feeling like it was my fault,
Okay.
So, and then having my friends tell everybody that, or so-called friends, I mean, it took me years to not feel like that was my fault, and my mom, her getting in trouble, all that, it was like my fault.
So did your interaction with the police at that time, did it feel like it was positive in effect, in a way that they were really trying to help you, or did you kind of feel indifferent about it?
I felt indifferent about it.
Okay.
I didn't receive like I know now like I probably should have received counseling services or certain things,
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
I didn't receive back then.
What year was this? Do you remember?
Ugh. Maybe 1999,
Okay.
98, maybe
Okay.
a little bit, maybe 97.
Okay.
Trying to remember. Yeah, sometime around then. And so that was really, really, really hard, and I carried that with me for everywhere I went. I feel like it was all my fault, and you know, that I had to get taken, and my mom, all this stuff. At the time, as an adult, I can look back and be like, no, this was wrong, that was wrong. But at the time, I couldn't see
Of
outside of
course.
that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was me that kind of dropped the ball, or it was me that.
Were you also separated from your brother?
Hmm.
You were.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So my brother ended up staying with a neighbor, and she was like this older lady. All the kids stayed at her house, on our street.
Okay.
So eventually, I got in contact with my dad, and he came from Maine and picked me up. And so now I'm living with my dad, who I don't know that well, right?
Yeah.
I have a phone relationship with him. I have an idea of, when you're a kid, if my dad was here,
Yeah.
you build your dad up. My dad's amazing, but
Yeah.
he was married to a woman that never wanted children, and all of a sudden she's got this like messed up kid at her house.
Yeah.
And I'm used to, at this point, I never had to answer like, where am I going? Whose house am I at? Did I go to school? Like I didn't have to
You had no
answer
rules.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I lived how I wanted, right? And so now I'm at my dad's house, and he wants to like drop me off at school every day.
He's being a parent.
Yeah, he wants to know.
Yeah.
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 If I go to my friend's house, he wants the number to the parents. He wants to know exactly when I'm going to be home. He has all
Exactly.
these rules that I wasn't used to,
Yeah.
And
So did you rebel against that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. They would drop me off to school, and I just wouldn't go in, and I wouldn't come home. Same thing that my mom would do. I wouldn't come home 2-3 days,
Yeah. And they didn't have any clue this was happening for a while, I'm assuming, or did they find out that you weren't going to school and doing what you were supposed to?
They would know.
Yeah.
I was very blatant about it. I remember my dad having a conversation with me, and he said, you have to be home by this time, and if you can't be home from this time, and I remember telling him, like, if it's 9 o'clock and my friends say, do you want to go to the beach? I'm going to go to the beach,
Yeah.
I had no respect for, or idea, or like care for what he was trying to do as a parent,
Yeah.
I was angry, and I definitely was angry with my stepmom, who was like trying to be a parent to me,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was a hot mess.
Did you just feel like, yeah, you're not my mom?
Yeah.
You can't tell me what to do. Got it. Yeah, that seems like a trend with a lot of kids that I encounter at work. When they have step parents, that's the trend, right? She's not my mom. She can't tell me what, this and that. So it's definitely a hard thing to navigate through as a step parent, I would imagine, because you want to treat them, most of the parents or step parents that I come across love them like they're their own, and they try to treat them like that, but the kids don't want that, necessarily.
Yeah. I think I went into the situation with like wanting maybe sympathy from my dad and my stepmom of like all that I had been through, or like understanding, or like,
Yeah.
I played the victim card. I wanted somebody to, I just wanted somebody, I think back then when I look back, like to be like, I'm sorry you had to do all that, or like, something,
Yeah, I mean, it's not unreasonable to want that, though, right?
Right.
I mean, he's your dad, and I'm not taking anything from him, because now you're with him, and he's, like you said, an amazing person. But you kind of feel, you have to feel at some point, why didn't you try harder to get me when I was going through that problem,
Yeah, and he wouldn't want to talk about it.
Yeah,
Like, I probably needed to talk about it, and he didn't want to talk about stuff like that.
yeah.
My dad's like a really, he could be a comedian,
Mm-hmm.
He wants everything to be light and funny,
Got it.
And I probably needed,
A serious conversation.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then I have made my dad into this like savior over the years in my mind,
Yeah.
He just can't find me, if he could find me, he would fix me, And now I'm face to face with him, and he's letting this lady now
Yeah.
tell me what to do, and set these rules on me and complain about me. And I felt, kind of like really, I felt alone for sure.
Yeah. And this is 16, right? Roughly?
Mm-mm.
How old were you at that time?
No, this is just a few months after that thing happened. So I was probably 13.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm in a new place with people I don't know, right? I don't
Okay.
really know my dad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Except for when I was little, right? My brother's in Pennsylvania still, and we get a phone call from that neighbor that she hasn't heard from my mom or anybody, and she can't care for my brother anymore, and so can my dad come get him? So we drive down and we get my brother. So now it's me and my brother there.
Yeah.
And my brother's like angry with me. Like I left him, I didn't care about him,
Yeah.
I always played like a mom role to my brother, So now he's angry at me. And by this time, I'm like I told you, skipping school. I'm taking acid,
Yeah.
drinking, doing everything that I could do when I wouldn't come home for days,
Where did you come across that?
So my dad lived in Portland, Maine. There was a lot of like hippie type people there.
Okay.
And a lot of those kind of like deadheads,
Yeah.
festival goers, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I remember at that age, I dropped out of school in 8th grade. So I didn't go. The first day of 8th grade, I didn't go. So technically I only finished 7th grade. And I was already at that point hanging out with like people that were way older than me. I mean, way, way older than me,
And where did you find yourself getting into the drug scene?
Just, through friends. Like I was skipping school. I liked to be around the kids that were badder, that wanted to party.
Yeah.
I remember stealing like certain friends' mom's pills and getting messed up on pills and doing stuff like that. And eventually, I just met some girls, and they took me, so they would have these like underground, what they call raves.
Yeah.
It'd be like a regular dance club, and it was for underage people,
Yeah.
like 16 and under or something like that. And then when it would close, it would turn into like a all-night after party. And that's the first time I took like acid and ecstasy. And then I decided I wasn't ever going to go back home to my dad's. Like
Wow.
I decided I was never going to go back home. I just stayed with these older people that would like travel around from show to show and do these drugs.
Wow. So that was your main drug at the time, like ecstasy, stuff like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ecstasy, LSD. I mean, whatever I could do, you know.
Yeah.
I tried heroin at that age.
How?
Just snorting it
Snorting it.
at a party, with some older people, right?
What was that first experience with heroin like?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how? Just euphoric?
Yep. I remember doing it and just laying out on the ground, my arms out, you know, just feeling like I was dreaming while I was awake.
Wow.
I felt great doing it, and I would definitely have done it again and again and again, you know.
It detached you from your reality also, right?
For sure.
That's a lot of the reason why I hear people use drugs in the first place, right? To detach them a little bit from their reality that they're in. So, did you not use it again after that, or was that just a one-time thing?
I don't think I used it again until later on, maybe a few years later. But at this point in my life, I'm like spending maybe it's been like 2 years homeless, just partying. Like there was all these like kids that were also homeless. We called them townies,
Yeah.
and we would just sit on the sidewalks and ask people for spare change and do drugs all day, you know. And I remember my dad came looking for me one time, and he told the police that I was underage, and they basically told him, like, we can't make her go home, you know?
Wow.
Yeah. Eventually, I ended up meeting some hippies and leaving to go, you know, on a festival tour or whatever. There was a period of time where I didn't talk to my own parents or anybody, my dad, nobody, for like 2 years. I just disappeared. My parents didn't know if I was dead or alive. My brother didn't know. Nobody knew, you know.
Where were you going with these people?
All over the country.
Okay, so you were leaving Philadelphia and Philly or whatever.
At this point, I was in Maine because
Okay.
I went to go stay with my dad. But yeah, just traveling from festival to festival, concert to concert.
Wow.
Never went back to school, you know. I ended up getting in some like trouble where I got jumped by these girls, and I didn't have anywhere to go, and I contacted my mom, you know, and she was like, "Oh, you can go to your grandma's house."
Yeah.
So I went from Maine back to Massachusetts, and now I'm staying back at my grandma's house.
How are you traveling this far? How are you getting around?
It's, you know, the East Coast, the states are really, really tiny and really close together. But I'd hitchhike. I've hitchhiked. I took, you know, Greyhound bus. Would catch rides with people. You know, I was hanging out with all older people. Like the average person, you know, I'm like 15, 16, and the people I'm hanging out with are like 25. You know,
Yeah.
they don't know how old I am.
Are you telling them?
No.
No. Okay.
No. So I go to stay back in Massachusetts with my grandmother, and now I'm returning back to the situation with my grandfather, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I'm like taking ecstasy all the time, taking Percocets all the time. I found a boyfriend, and he also was doing those things, right?
Yeah.
I remember this haunted me for a really long time, but I remember at that age allowing my grandfather to like touch me, rub lotion on my legs, or do whatever.
Yeah.
Because he gave me money, you know.
And this is as the older you.
Mm-hmm.
So you were allowing it now because you felt like you were getting something for it. Wow.
Yeah. That made me feel like a real like scumbag, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's around the age that I met my son's father.
Okay.
He was older than me. He was like 22. He was a heroin addict. I remember hanging out with him the first couple times, and he showed me heroin, bought heroin, and I would snort it with him. And then within like a week of just hanging out with him every day, you know, he would shoot up.
Yeah.
And I was already shooting up at that point, heroin with him.
At 16?
Mhm.
You were 16? Wow. So
Yeah.
you have one son?
I have one son, and now I have 3 daughters. One son and 3 daughters. Yeah.
Okay.
But at
So,
this point, I don't have a child yet.
yeah. Got it.
But yeah, I'm like,
That's his father, though. That
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So you get involved with him. You're 16. He's, how old you said?
He's like 22.
22.
Yeah.
Okay. So already a problem there, right?
Mhm.
And then he teaches you more about heroin and how to use it. And
So he's like shooting up heroin. He's allowing me to snort it. And then within a week, I'm like holding my arm out and letting him shoot me up while I look away because I was like scared of needles,
wow.
He had a really bad habit, right? And with heroin, if you don't have it for just a few hours, you start to feel sick.
Yeah.
And I remember he would act like I didn't have a habit too, So he would make himself get well, and I'd be like just sick, feeling sick, but he'd be like, "Oh no, you don't have a habit,"
Wow.
Just be sick. And then we got so used to just doing heroin together all the time because that's what happens, right? The only way we could clean up from that is he used to like mine crystals, like Herkimer diamonds, he would call them. So he would go out like in the middle of nowhere in the woods, and like we would just detox cold turkey, like in a tent, white knuckle, just horrible.
So can you, for people that don't, haven't experienced addiction like that, can you explain what you actually go through and what it feels like to detox?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
The best way to describe it is like, it feels like your bones want to physically come out of your skin. Like it's really hard to describe, and there's a lot of like stretching and yawning because it just feels like if you could pull your bones out because it's like a feeling inside your bones.
Like an aching.
Like an aching, a stretching, like you feel like you want to take like a wire scrub brush and just like scrub your bones.
Wow. Yeah.
Kind of
I get it. Yeah.
Extreme anxiety. Just you just saying hi to somebody that you know your entire life. So much anxiety coming just to say hi or speak,
Yeah.
And then, upset stomach, sweating, just freezing cold, just the only thing that you can do to, you hear like about heroin addicts, like the shaking, rocking back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Because that feeling is so bad. Like the only thing, you can't sleep, you can't do anything but just like lie there and shake, or sometimes even like hurt yourself because it's the only thing that makes you feel better for a second,
So do you feel like this is the reason why most heroin addicts resort to crime to get there? Because they're like, I don't want to do this. I would rather go to jail or do something.
You absolutely cannot function and go through withdrawals. Like if you're truly addicted, there's no like, especially for people that like, you can't just stop life. How many people do you know can just be like, I'm just going to stop life for the next week and go curl in a corner and pretty much feel like I'm going to die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nobody does that willingly, especially even worse if you have kids to care for. If you have
without a support system, right?
If you have if you're homeless and you need to upkeep where you're going to sleep, where you're going to do this, you can't, you're not going to go through that. You know what I mean? So of course they resort to crime because the feeling is so bad. It's not just like having the flu. Like it literally feels like you want to die. It's so bad and you're so sick. I don't think anybody would voluntarily want to do that. So especially if you know there's this one thing that you can do.
Yeah.
To make that go away.
Everything. Yeah.
And not just make it go away, but make you feel completely normal in a second.
Mm-hmm. It's your body's way of fighting itself to get back to your normal like homeostasis, right? It's trying to get back there, and the overuse of it over time takes that normal level up even higher. So I get it. I mean, I've never had to deal with that. I don't know what it's like to deal with, but I would imagine that it's a horrible thing to have to go through. How long does it take for someone to get to that level of addiction?
4 days,
Just
constant using.
constant using. Wow.
Each time that you experience withdrawal, it gets worse and worse, and more intense. Because
Yeah.
because like you just said, your body and your mind, and the receptors of your brain just get so
Fried.
used to having
Yeah.
that on there. So at first, you can at first just feel like, oh, sniffly, maybe a little bit shaky, sweaty, upset stomach. But when you go through that first initial little sickness and then you go right back to using again, which most people do,
Yeah.
yeah, it only takes about 4 or 5 days to have your body be completely. Now, later on in addiction, if you've done that enough times and you've been addicted long enough, like say I have 3 years sober, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I were to pick up heroin today, just use it like for the next 24 hours, the second I don't have anymore, my brain automatically remembers that feeling of being sick,
Wow.
and it just goes right there. It
That's
just
why
goes
it's
there.
so hard for somebody to recover and then relapse and then recover again.
Yep.
Okay. Oh,
And it gets harder and harder
that
each
makes
time.
sense. So, in your journey to sobriety, did you relapse
Oh yeah,
multiple times?
yeah,
Yeah.
multiple times.
All right.
So I'm at the point where I'm like completely now. The only time I can stay free from heroin is if I'm like in the woods in a tent, right? And we would go tent and camp for like months at a time. But anytime we like were in a city or we would find heroin, right?
Yeah.
I ended up getting pregnant at 19. And I did that with him for years, with my son's father for years, just using heroin, cleaning ourselves up, using heroin, cleaning ourselves up.
Did you use while you were pregnant?
Maybe like the first 3 months, I withdrew by myself, and I moved to Pennsylvania. I finally contacted my mom,
Mm-hmm.
and I said I'm pregnant. She let me come and stay with her, and yeah, I didn't use it the whole time. The rest of the time I was pregnant with my son. Babies don't fix addiction, right?
Yeah.
Like you're addicted. You need some healing, and you need things that you need to fix yourself. A lot of times people think like, oh, I'll have a baby and I'll be happy. I'll love this baby so much that
Yeah.
that I won't want to use drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I won't want to do that to myself because I'm going to be selfless, right? I'm going to have this baby.
Mm-hmm.
It's not true.
Yeah.
It's not true. And then you have a baby and you make those same mistakes you would have had without, the same mistakes. But now you feel the guilt and shame because you have a child.
But now there's a victim.
Right.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, wow, it is definitely a vicious cycle of, dealing with addiction. Like I said, I do talk to a lot of people that are dealing with current addiction and then people that have recovered from it. But the ones that are dealing with it now, they're just like, I have no desire to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very honest about it. They're like, I don't even have, if you were to tell me you'll pay me money to go somewhere and stay and help me, I wouldn't want to do it.
It's their way of life now.
Yeah.
That's what's normal to them,
Yeah. So how long were you in this addiction? How long did it last?
So after I had my son, so I had my son, and also, I found out while I was pregnant that I had hepatitis. I was like, oh man, I got tested, all the stuff you get tested for when you're pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
Which was like really sad for me.
Yeah. C?
Yeah, hepatitis C. I ended up having my body fought it off, but at the time, my mom was really crazy. Like she was like wouldn't let me use the forks or the spoons at the house, or like, she was just weird, right?
Yeah.
My mom's never stopped her addiction. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. You're good.
My mom's never stopped her addiction, so she's just been able to like become more and more functioning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, I'm staying with my mom, and she's just still doing the same thing, like drinking every day, going to work, drinking every day, going to work, right?
Yeah.
And we had a lot of like unresolved stuff, so she wouldn't let me use the forks or the knives, or she was just really weird about
Just thought
everything
you were
because I had
gonna
hep C.
transfer it to someone else, right?
Yeah. And
Got
even
it.
when I had my son, she was just weird about it.
And this, I'm assuming, came from the intravenous drug use, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And during that drug use, when you were shooting up, this is not like a cleanly thing that you're doing, right? You're like,
Not at
wherever
all.
I can get this needle, I'm going to use it, right? There's no
Sharing
thought
needles to all kinds of people.
yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's a thing that I I always want to kind of bring up and have somebody explain, and maybe you can do that for me, is where's the thought process when you're dealing with this addiction that you're just like, just give me. One of my biggest fears at work is I reach into somebody's pocket and I poke myself, right? So it's right there at the forefront of my thought process, and probably every cop out there. For you, it's like, I don't care. Just give me the needle. I need to, I need to use it. Is that what the thought process was?
So, once again, the reason we said that people will, choose to resort to criminal acts if it's between me being sick and feeling that sickness or just getting instantly well,
Yeah.
and the only thing stopping me from doing that is a needle that you've used, we'll tell ourselves things like, oh, let's clean it out with some bleach. Right?
Wow.
And this is at a time where they didn't have needle exchanges.
Yeah.
They didn't offer, safe use needles, they didn't, no harm reduction, no needle exchanges. Yeah. So you would get a needle and like hold on to that thing,
Yeah.
sharpen it with matches because it'd be dull. And like,
Oh.
I remember stealing needles out of the needle drop box at the doctor's offices,
Yeah.
and cleaning them out with bleach. Because
Jeez.
at that point, so if I just use the heroin by snorting it, my money's limited, right? I use the money by snorting it. I'm
Doesn't
probably still
last
going
as
to be
long,
sick.
right?
It's not going to hit me as strong. I'm going to
Yeah.
have to use more in order to get well.
Yeah.
Compared to just shooting it, I'm going to get well instantly and use way less.
So when you snort it, if you were to do a snort, let's say, how much were you using at a time, would you say?
So on the East Coast, it's China White, so it comes in bundles,
Okay.
like these little wax bags, and it's powder.
Mm-hmm.
So probably, if I were to snort it, like 2 or 3 bags, but if I was going to shoot it, half a bag.
Okay.
Yeah.
So using let's say you snort 2 or 3 bags, how long are you staying high as opposed to shooting a half a bag?
So here's the tricky thing. Snorting the heroin, you're going to stay high longer.
Okay.
It's going to stay in your system longer. It takes longer to metabolize, but it doesn't hit you full on because it has to go through the process, right?
Got it.
Shooting heroin
Goes directly in your bloodstream.
hits you harder,
Mm-hmm.
is stronger, but is way shorter of a shelf life. So if you snorted heroin, you could probably be well for 4 hours. If you shoot it, you have like 2.
So you're eventually using the same amount as you would anyway because you're kind of trying to catch
You're
up
just
and just
constantly
constantly doing it,
Yeah.
right? So how many in a day?
A bundle. In a bundle is like, I would easily use a bundle, 2 bundles a day. A bundle is 12 bags of heroin.
Wow.
And you can, usually at that point in an addiction, you've met somebody that sells it. That's, a normal person would pay $100 for a bundle. You're probably paying like 60. You know what I mean?
And how are you getting this money?
Every way, shape, or form that I could. It was always easy for me. Sex was always easy for me. An easy way for me to get money. I started to, dance at dance clubs. Yeah.
Okay.
Not really committing too much crime at that time yet. Just mostly using my body as a way.
Mm-hmm. Like stripping?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how old were you?
Stripping and working. At this time, like 19,
Okay.
20.
Okay.
Yeah, I had my son. And I'm like dancing at these hole in the wall type of strip clubs where like you're going for a dance in the side room where you're just doing sexual favors,
Wow.
all
Yeah.
night long for money. Yeah.
Where is your son at this time?
Now I've done the same thing my mom did to me, right? I'm now leaving him with my mom,
Wow.
right? She left me with my grandpa, and I'm now leaving him with her.
Because this addiction is just telling you that it doesn't matter.
And
This is the most important thing.
and because I'm now at this point using heroin and needles, and my mom knows that,
Mm-hmm.
now my mom is like at a point where, she can point the finger at me, how I'm so bad, right?
So she doesn't take any of the blame of any of this
No,
coming back to her?
no.
No. Okay.
I'm so bad. I'm such a bad mom. She now has to keep my son safe from me,
Hmm.
Yeah, that was hard. So I'm like dancing at strip clubs. Finally, I asked my mom, she has my son. She's not letting me see my son. And I asked her for help. So I go to a rehab, get me into like a rehab.
Yeah.
And I go to rehab. And that starts the long journey of, meeting people in rehab. You think you go to rehab and you're like, oh, I'm going to get better.
Yeah.
But meeting people in rehab, that's like more connections to more, And
Yeah.
I'm moving all around, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Moving from friend group to friend group until I would burn everybody in there, place to place, So I got sent to a rehab in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And it was like one of those places I did like 90 days, and then I went to a halfway house where you could take your kid with you. My mom brought my son, and I met a girl, and I thought I was in love with her,
Mm-hmm.
And I had about the longest time I ever had was like 6 months at that time. And I had my son back with me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started using again with her,
She was using heroin as well?
hmm
Okay.
And she had like, her lifestyle was so different than mine than when I was used to. I was used to like scraping the bottom of the barrel, right? Like to get my dope, or like,
Yeah.
she was rich, like so rich. Like she had like trust fund kid, her parents, everything fancy.
So it was very easy for her to get.
Her parents knew she was a heroin addict. She could just like threaten them, like, if you don't get me heroin,
Yeah.
I'll do this, or that, I'll sell my body, so they give her whatever she wanted.
Yeah.
And now they have me living with them too,
Yeah.
And my son. And like now it's a whole different lifestyle for me. There's like the money is endless,
Yeah.
I don't have to do anything for it. But just already access what's there, right?
You think it made your addiction worse?
Way worse.
Okay.
Yeah, way worse.
Yeah.
Way worse. I was, and at this point now, it's way worse because I'm using speedballs, right?
Yeah.
I'm shooting cocaine and heroin,
Yeah.
and I ended up getting arrested for a DWI, and my mom, I spent the weekend in jail, so my mom got my son,
Yeah.
and then she never gave him back after that for
Mm-hmm.
pretty much till this day,
Wow.
almost.
So can you just explain real quick the speedball? What are the effects of using those together? I just want to cover that real quick.
So a speedball is heroin and cocaine mixed together, and you shoot it. The effects. So when you shoot cocaine, it's a different kind of drug than if you like snorted cocaine. It's almost like a psychedelic.
Okay.
You shoot cocaine and like you instantly like hallucinate. You can't hear, you can't see. Like it's like so strong. Like the only way I thought a shot of cocaine was good is if I did it and it made me like what we would call fish out. Like I would shoot the cocaine, my whole body would convulse.
Oh.
Couldn't see, and I would just be like kind of rocking and like crazy. So that mixed with heroin, you would get that same effect without the come down from cocaine. Because you do cocaine, anybody that does cocaine, it's like you instantly want more.
Yeah.
Your like body is feeding for more, an instant thing. With the heroin, it kind of alleviates that. So you have the the intense rush of the high with the
No.
comfortable come down.
Wow. Okay.
Right?
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
I never really had anybody explain exactly. I mean, I go to classes, and I became a drug recognition expert, right, so to speak. But when you talk to somebody that actually does it and has done it, they obviously are going to be able to explain it a lot better, right? Because we're not using these drugs to figure out what they feel like. So I appreciate you explaining that.
Yeah. So my addiction to that was pretty much out of control, crazy. I was using shooting cocaine to the point where my heart stopped,
Wow.
and I was in the ICU for like 2 weeks. And they wanted to put a defibrillator in my heart.
Wow.
It really was messing up my body,
Yeah.
So after that, I tried to get on methadone to like clean myself up,
Yeah.
Me and my partner, the one that had all the money, we're now taking methadone, and I'm going to this clinic. I liked going to that clinic so much that I like moved right across the street from it,
So
Easy to
basically,
get to.
methadone is basically the same thing as the opiate without the psychoactive type of effect, right?
No.
Or the physical effect? No.
It has a physical effect. It's long lasting.
Mm-hmm.
So unlike heroin, you can only use it once a day.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to continuously use it to get the effect. And it doesn't have a ceiling, so you can get high. And when I say ceiling, I think you know what I mean, right? There's
Yeah.
certain drugs that you could just use so much, and you're not going to get any higher.
Yeah.
Right? Methadone doesn't have a ceiling. Like, you can overdose on it.
Got it.
You can take more. The reason that they say methadone is better, it's like maintenance, is because if you're getting something every single day, and that takes away the risk of going through withdrawal, you no longer have to. You no longer have to commit crime to get money to try to get well. You no longer are going to share needles.
Yeah.
It takes the risk away. It kind of feeds the addiction with long term without the risk of having to keep using it.
But the sickness from stopping methadone is going to be similar to stopping heroin, right?
It's almost worse.
Wow.
Lasts longer. Methadone stays in your body, has a really long shelf life. So it slows down your metabolism. And they say, I don't know if this is true, but everybody says it like stores up in your bones,
Oh.
So like if you stop using methadone, you're not going to be sick right away.
Yeah.
About 4 or 5 days, and then you'll start feeling sick. The sickness isn't going to be the same as heroin, where it's going to be instant, all symptoms at once.
Yeah.
It's like a prolonged experience over like, say, like a month of time, right? No sleeping for a month.
So, in your opinion, being, a recovered addict, do you feel like methadone is the proper way to get off of heroin, or?
I feel like methadone is a tool for harm reduction for somebody that wants to continue to get high.
Mm-hmm.
It's a safer bet, right, than using heroin and using the high risk situations. Do I see using methadone as being sober? No.
No, definitely not. Yeah. Okay, so you were explaining something prior to that. I kind of derailed you, but
so I was explaining that I found methadone, and now I'm going to this methadone clinic, and I'm like manipulating the doctor there, like he has me on 230 milligrams of methadone.
okay,
Such
is that a
an
lot?
insane dose,
Okay.
yeah. And I'm getting it like split dose, like half in the morning, half at night. And with methadone, you don't get that instant high like you do with heroin. So now I'm using other drugs with it, Xanax. And Xanax was like my real downfall. I just everything I've ever done that was bad was on Xanax,
Yeah.
And I'm taking so many Xanax every single day with the methadone so that I can feel.
Over the heroin, you think that's the worst thing?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's important to hear, for people that, I mean, you think heroin is like, you've kind of reached the epitome of drugs when you hear it, because intravenous, right? People think it's, but Xanax is more readily available out there too.
It's more readily available, and it completely puts down your inhibitions. You have no right from wrong. You just don't care about anything. And then especially now, most Xanax are like home pressed with fentanyl. It's mixed with methadone. It was a pretty crazy combination. You couldn't even talk to me. I would like all day like just be bent in this position, like couldn't stay awake.
You see it.
This is my head. This is my feet, just bent over everywhere I go. I remember I would like use the bathroom, fall asleep on the toilet, wake up, couldn't even walk on my legs because they'd be completely dead because I just nodded off in the bathroom for hours, nodding off, walking across the street, wake up in the middle of the street like, oh, I'm just keep about my business. And I spent about a year like that, and shooting cocaine on top of that.
Jeez. Wow.
As a way to just to get high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So getting the money to do this at that time was through
Easy.
your girlfriend, right?
Easy.
At the time. Okay. And how long were you guys together?
8 years.
8. Wow. So for 8 years, it was just simple for you to have
Not
this
for
habit.
the whole 8 years. She, throughout that 8 years, she had gone to jail a couple times, and she would go to jail, and her family's not going to keep feeding me money. She's in jail. You know? I would go to jail, different things like that. Eventually, her mom smartened up and was like, I'm not going to give you any more money because you're killing yourself.
Yeah.
And her fear was always to do that. She was afraid that if she didn't give her money, she was going to do something bad that was going to, ruin her whole future or kill her or whatever.
Yeah.
So she decided to show her a little bit of tough love. And also at the time she went to jail, I think for like 6 months. And I'm like left out now to my own devices.
Yeah.
And there's this part of Philly that we would go to get our heroin.
Okay.
We lived in a nicer part of Philly. It's called Bucks County. But we would drive like the half an hour to Kensington, Philadelphia. I don't know if you've ever heard of Kensington.
Not familiar. No.
If you could, I would love for you to just look it up one time.
Wow.
They call it like Zombie Land, right?
Mm.
It's so bad down there. I mean, people
Is it
literally...
like Skid Row in LA kind of thing?
Worse.
Really?
It's worse than the Tenderloin.
Wow.
They say it's the number one open air drug market in the world. Like like you could just get anything there. There's so much of it, and there's so much of it that the cops, they can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
They don't even try. Like when you go to buy dope in Philly and Kensington, you're standing in line. You're standing in line at the dope
it's not
man.
Undercover. You're you're like waiting.
Standing in line waiting
at
to
a
get
market
served.
kind of.
Like
Wow.
exactly.
That's crazy.
And then you have what's called Kensington K&A. Everybody just selling needles. Like, they say works. And they'll sell needles for $1, whatever else they're selling, right?
Yeah.
It's really bad down there, and then crime riddled and just horrible. Just horrible.
Are people buying these needles, or are they just like, I'm not going to spend my $1 on this when I can use it for the dope that I have because I don't really care?
At this point, there's needle exchanges. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of somebody's hustle. That's how these people are getting their heroin. They're selling these needles for $1 to the people that are like coming from Bucks County that don't know about a needle exchange, right? They're just coming down there to buy heroin, and they're going to buy 10 needles, 20 needles off of this guy on the street. You know what I mean?
What's your personal opinion on that, the needle exchange? Do you think it's a benefit, or do you think that it's enabling?
I think it's a benefit. I think that people are going to use drugs. I think they're going to use drugs no matter what. Mm-hmm. Not providing them the safety, the clean things to use it doesn't do anything but increase HIV, increase crime, increase everything, right? And I also do agree that an aspect of it is enabling.
Yeah.
But when you look at the bigger picture, people are definitely going to use, no matter what, providing them a place. Now in San Francisco, there's places you can go, shower, get high. Mm-hmm. You don't have to leave to get high. You can just get high there, especially in the Tenderloin. And those people are in a safe environment. If they overdose, someone's going to know.
You think that reduces crime?
I think it reduces crime somewhat, but I
Because they're
think
not giving them the dope to use. They're
no,
just giving them the means to do it, right?
right.
So how would it reduce the crime?
So some places are giving them money, giving them incentives. Like if you come to this needle exchange and you learn about, the proper way to
Got
do
it.
this, we'll pay you $10 or whatever,
I didn't
right?
know that. Okay.
Um, but I think of the idea, right? Even if somebody is going to a place just to get high in a place, a safe place, you provide them needles, but you also talk to them about recovery.
Mm-hmm.
You also plant a seed for something different. They know that you're planting a seed for some change, for something to happen. They know where to go if they
It's
do
something they're
decide.
not getting out there with the people they're
Right,
using with,
right,
obviously.
right.
Okay. Okay. I get
So
it.
I think it helps in that sense of of meeting people directly where they're at.
So what do you say to the people that believe that, drug addiction is not a disease? It's a choice. It's your own choice.
So I would say that I think every last one of us in this world have made some poor choices, right?
Yeah.
I think initially it's definitely a choice. Like who here hasn't had a beer, who here hasn't done something they weren't supposed to do. So yeah, it was a choice at first. I think the environment that you grow up in and your ability to know right from wrong definitely plays a role in it. But once you make that choice, for me, it was something that activated in my brain, right?
Yeah.
My environment played a role in it, but a certain thing activated in my brain. Now, I would never in a million years choose to lose my children to CPS like I did.
Yeah.
I never choose to be homeless like I did, choose to be a prostitute, choose to feed this thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think that part is a choice.
So I guess the argument is it's a choice to start, right?
Mm-hmm.
To do any of these things, you're going to make a choice. Even to drink alcohol, you're going to smoke a cigarette, you're going to make that choice initially. So do you believe that because you started that, a disease like, let's say, cancer, you didn't just wake up one day and go, I'm going to have cancer today. You get what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
when people look at it, I think that's the argument is it's not a disease. You have a choice to start this process where mentally, yes, now you're addicted to this and you're going to be stuck doing this, but would you classify it as a disease or would you classify it more as a mental thing?
I think my argument with that would be, I told you that my first time shooting heroin was at 16, right?
Yeah.
I'd already used it a couple times. Are 16-year-olds able to make full consented choices?
Yeah, no.
No,
Absolutely
right?
not. Yeah.
And so again, yes, it was a choice to try a drug. I don't believe it was my choice for it to take over my life the way it did.
You also have a very particular circumstance growing up, probably created some sort of mental issues with you anyway. You had a lot on your shoulders at a very young age. I think you said 5 or 6 years old, you were already dealing with your mom's problems.
Mm-hmm.
She was kind of putting
Mm-hmm.
those on you. Not to mention, which is even worse, the sexual abuse and things that you had to deal with. So I would imagine that those mental things that you dealt with that were kind of bottled up helped you make decisions that were probably not the right decisions for you. Not everybody goes through what you went through and starts using drugs, So I think I hear what you're saying 100%. And my personal opinion on it is, yes, we have a choice in the beginning. And from everybody that I've ever spoken to, it's like when you're addicted, there's nothing you can do to fix that unless you make that, and you have to make that other choice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to change your life.
Mm-hmm. I think that I feel like we're all kind of recovering from childhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe somebody else's circumstances wasn't as bad as mine or wasn't the same as mine. That doesn't mean that any pain that they went through as a childhood wasn't real, right? I just didn't feel the same like in intensity, right? But I just feel like we know scientifically, it's proven. We know that once addiction has been activated and once we are playing with dopamine and playing with those certain things in the brain and the receptors, we know that something happens in the brain where it's now takes over your brain, and it's you don't make rational decisions. You don't.
Yeah.
Your cravings and the want for it are so intense because it's an actual disorder, right?
Yeah.
That we can measure, we can see. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you did mention in there prostitution, right? Was that something that you got involved with because of drugs, or was that because of your past sexual abuse, or both?
I think both, because I didn't ever see sex as something special.
Yeah.
It was easy
Okay.
for me to just give away transactionally, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
And was that to feed the habit that you had?
Feed the
addiction?
habit, feed just being able to live, right? So if I can go back at this point, I was telling you about Kensington, and now this girl that was giving me all this money for so long is in jail, and I'm just out there.
Yeah.
And so I'm like staying in trap houses and what we call shooting galleries, which is like big abandoned buildings. And people just go there to get high, shoot up, and get out the cold or whatever.
Yeah.
And now I'm walking up and down that avenue, and I'm just hopping in and out of strangers' cars to get the next fix, right?
Okay.
Because I couldn't be sick in between that. And in doing that, I was beaten, I was raped, I was robbed, I was kidnapped. All type of things would happen to me.
Wow.
That place was just so bad. I would hop in a stranger's car and agree to go with them back to their house or whatever for a certain amount of money. And, next thing you know, you're getting tied up and getting, cigarette butts put out on you. And, people are into really weird stuff.
Yeah.
And they know that they could go down there where people are at their lowest. Women are at their lowest and they need the money, right?
And you're not going to say anything about it, right?
And they'll just treat them so horribly. Even the police in Philadelphia will treat you so horribly.
Yeah.
I can remember one time being out on that Ave, and out of nowhere, this guy comes up to me. He just starts nailing me, like punching me in the head, punching me in the face. And I'm like curled up in a ball, and he's punching me. He's like, "Bitch, you stole my mama's chain." Da, da, da. I'd never seen this guy in my life, right?
Wow.
Never in my life. So he rips my phone out of my hand, and I'm waving a cop down. Like, help, this guy's hitting me, help, And I remember the cop pulled to the side of the road. He goes, what do you want me to do about it? You shouldn't be down here.
Oh, wow.
You shouldn't be down here,
So did you feel like that was kind of the thought process of the police out there?
Absolutely.
They just didn't even want to involve themselves in that area at all?
Those police out there are so tired, and a lot of them join in on the crime, It's really like the money is really bad out there. Like the trap houses I was telling you about, we would know. So they have this thing called Task Force Thursday. Mm-hmm. And every Thursday, they would do raids, right? Like they would park a cop on one end of the street, and whoever came out, they would arrest the buyers, the people that bought dope on that block, right? But the people that ran the trap house would know. Like the cops would tell them that they would take the dope from the raid, from the trap house, and then sell it back to them afterwards. Like so many police officers in Philadelphia have been arrested or been caught doing that. It's insane.
Oh man. So
I would love for you to look that up sometime. It's pretty bad down there.
I would imagine. And when you say they have, what Ave was this?
Kensington Ave.
Kensington Avenue is the name. Okay.
Yep.
I thought that was the name of the town. Okay.
No, it's just it's right underneath the elevated train. It's like the subway system in Philadelphia, but it's above ground.
Yeah.
It's just so bad down there. It's really, really bad down there.
It sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Sounds horrible. So when you were dealing with this and putting yourself out there, for, in order to feed this addiction. Can you talk about some of the things that you had to endure out there?
Yeah. I had been, I ended up staying with a pimp.
Mm-hmm.
He owned a house down there, and he allowed, like, there was probably like 10 girls that would live there, and the rule was we would go up and down the Ave. We weren't allowed to spend our money anywhere. We would bring the money back to him, and he would give us the drugs
Okay.
himself. But his drugs were garbage, and, we would do other things like buy drugs elsewhere.
Yeah.
And people would tell him, and he would, send people like beat us up,
Yeah. So when you would bring him the money, would he give you any of the money?
No.
Not just the drugs.
Yeah.
Wow.
If you brought him $150, you would get like 3 bags of heroin. And at this point, I was like smoking crack all day long. You get 3 bags of heroin and like 3 bags of crack, and you can stay there. You don't have to pay rent, right? That's
Yeah.
and he's supposed to be somebody that protects you, right?
Yeah.
And we had a rule like you had to check in every 2 hours. If you didn't come in off the ab every 2 hours, then he would know that you're obviously on a date,
Mm-hmm.
So if you didn't have a date or nobody picked you up, you could go back every 2 hours and get well. Just well,
Yeah. Yeah.
But the tally would add up. So if you didn't have a date and you go back there and it's a bad day and you just keep getting well, it gives you just enough to get well. You owe that still. You know what I mean?
Jeez.
Like in the hole.
So how many dates were you sometimes having in a day or a night?
I mean, it was all day long. I would do easily like 5-10 dates on an average. I would just hop in people's cars, quick 15-minute around the corner,
Wow. And is safety even a thought at that point, or are you just randomly just doing these things unprotected, or how is that?
I would always try to be protected. And that's another horrible thing that happens out there. Men are so much stronger than women, You can tell a guy like, no, you have to use a condom.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't want to, you're not going to be able to really stop him, especially if you're in a bad situation. We would try to stick together as girls.
Yeah.
You'd try to, we'd all stand in a certain spot together, so somebody knew what car I got in.
That was kind of your own protection ways. I mean, it wasn't very effective, but it was
really
something.
what he was supposed to be doing, the pimp,
Got it.
If he was on a good day, he would follow you in his car.
So I'm going to rewind you again. What kind of recruiting process did he just come up on you one day and say, hey, you work for me?
No, he wasn't like that. There are people like that. And I've experienced people like that. If with him, it was more, most of the girls that were on the Ave lived with him in that house.
Okay.
And so talking with them, it's like, they're like, oh, well, you could just come,
Got it.
Yeah.
And is that what happened to you?
Mm-hmm.
You got in contact with one of them. They said, hey, I got a place. It's free. And he provides us with.
My first contact there was, one of the girls was like, oh, I'll pay you to do my makeup.
Wow.
Yeah. That's before I was really like going on the app,
Yeah.
I'll pay you to do my makeup. And all the other girls probably will too, And he was real nice to me. Oh, you're so pretty, da da da. Makes you feel like you're going to be able to like just stay in his house and you're going to be taken care of. It's not, not the case.
Was he abusive to you guys? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how?
So, like for me, like I was telling you, his drugs weren't good, so I had trouble coming home every 2 hours like we were supposed to. I would disappear, or I would go on dates with people that had a lot of money and would just want me to stay with them, and I would then spend the money on drugs and not have any to bring home to him.
Yeah.
So, I would avoid going back there as much as I could until it would get so bad where, I had to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And I would go because I'd be sick. You'd have good days and bad days. And I'd be like so sick or had just got beat up or whatever. And I would go back to his house. And his way of being angry of you is he would rape you like anally. Like it's not something like wasn't enjoyable, wasn't like it was like something you had to do to show him you were sorry type of thing, you know. And then he would be nice to you afterwards, you know, give you whatever drugs you needed, tell you to get some rest, like so twisted. Huh?
Oh man, yeah, it's horrible. It really is horrible to think that. I mean, this is your story, but there's so many women that were going through that at
So
the same
many.
time. It's horrible. So were you with him the entire time that you were doing that?
So I was with him the entire time that I was on, like, hopping in and out of cars, being on the Ave. And then I met who I would call my savior at the time. His name was John, and he introduced me to Backpage.
Okay.
He had already had like 12 girls that he kept in these nice fancy hotel rooms, and he kept, you know, he would have a girl in a room and a guy that worked for him in the room.
Yeah.
And like he would buy them nice clothes, and all they had to do was just sit in that hotel room all day, and he would book dates on Backpage.
Wow.
And do the same thing, give you drugs, no money.
So you never got any money for
No.
any wow.
No.
That's if you were working for someone. Did you ever do this on your own?
So doing it on your own, so out there you need to work for somebody because they're protecting you not from the clients so much. They're not protecting you from the Johns that you're meeting up with. They're protecting you from the other pimps.
Got it.
There's pimps out there that they don't care, right? About your physical well-being. They don't care about if you have nice clothes. They don't care if you have dope.
Yeah.
And they, you know, they're really nasty. So you work with somebody because if you're somebody's,
Yeah.
because they all work together and they know each other, it's like, hey, I'm not gonna hurt this girl or take her stuff or do this because that's John's girl, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's really why you work with somebody.
So when you now are with him and you said he's like your savior, does that mean he wasn't abusive towards you?
He was abusive in a different sense. He was like a savior to me because at this point I'd been on that avenue so much and I had been hurt so many times, and just like, you know, and when I say raped, I don't mean raped. When I say raped, I mean like people forcing you to have sex without a condom.
Yeah.
Or like forcing you to have sex and then not giving you the money they were supposed to give you, or taking the money back. To me, that's like rape, you know?
Yeah.
And so I just had experienced so much at that time. And here comes this guy who's like really nice to me. He's like, here, let's get your nails done. Let's get you some clothes. Let's put you in a nice hotel, you know? And all you have to do is I'll send these dates over. And the dates were like, they weren't people from the avenue, you know, looking to like hurt me. They were like middle class businessmen.
Paying more money.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And it wasn't even the money that I was worried about. It was, I had a nice place to be, and I didn't have to ever worry about going to cop dope or nothing. It was just provided to me, you know? And he cared about me in a different kind of way, where like, which I, at the time, I know now was so twisted, but he would like, oh, let's take some of this money you earned and send it to your mom so your son has money. Or, you know, like he played like a father-like role in my life. Like he convinced me that I was special, and he gave me like responsibilities. Like eventually he was charged with house arrest, and he couldn't leave his house, right? So he was allowing me to like go around to different hotel rooms and like pick up his money, or like,
oh, got it.
You know,
yeah.
He taught me how to post ads on Backpage and how to create Google lines and how to like, you know, really sell that side of it.
Yeah.
To where I was doing all that.
Because they do have different style of pimping, right? I mean, I know that just some that I know, and I'm sure you know more than I do, but they have like the lover boy pimp, the boyfriend pimp, the gorilla pimp. Like, you know, what are the difference between these styles?
His was more like a father
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
He played more of like a father role in my life. Like, you know, he wanted me to care about myself. He wanted me to upkeep myself. He'd take me to court, you know, check in on my probation officer, like stuff that like nobody else would care about, you
Yeah.
know. Did you talk to your son this week? Did you, you know?
Yeah.
He also, it's crazy, but he had a spiritual aspect about him. Like he was a Buddhist, you
Okay.
know, and so he would like have these people come and chant in his house every day. Like he would make me feel special. Like, you know, you're the only one that is allowed to come to my house, you know.
Got it. Do you feel like this was, in a way, this was his mental game to keep you from telling on him also? Like if anything ever went down, you would say he's actually not a bad guy, so I don't want to.
I don't think it ever crossed my mind to tell on him.
Got
I
it.
think I looked at him like,
Do you think that's why though?
yeah,
Or,
I was so
okay.
thankful to him.
Yeah. Got it.
If I didn't make money, he didn't hit me, you know.
Yeah. So he wasn't abusive towards you like that,
Like
hitting.
that, right.
Okay.
Later, he would lock me. He ended up, you know, he would lock me in his bedroom, because I would get tired. You know, I would get tired. I'd be in the hotel room and doing dates all day long, and I wouldn't see anybody. I'd just be by myself. And then this guy that he would pay to stay in a room next to me would come and collect money and give me the drugs that he provided to me. And I would only ever talk to him,
Yeah.
you know, on the phone. He was on house arrest constantly. If I wasn't on a date, he had me on the phone. I had to stay on the phone with him constantly. It was like the form of control was insane. And so I would find opportunities to break free from that. Like a date would come and they'd be younger and they'd party, and I'd be like, all right, and I would leave, you know, the hotel and sneak out. And so, and then I would do the same thing, or I wouldn't come back for days because I didn't know how to come back, you know. And so then he started locking me in his bedroom. He'd put a padlock on the outside and a bucket in his room, right, for me to go to the bathroom in.
Oh,
and
shit.
He would leave because he had these things he could do, like for probation, and, you know, certain things he was like doing for work that he was allowed to do with his ankle. From the outside looking in, you look at this guy, he wore a business suit every day. He would go and he would help people. He was like working as like a re-entry person to help people that came out of prison, like find jobs and stuff. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he would keep me locked in that room, and he would call me, and I'd be like going crazy in there, and he'd be like, look under the corner of the rug, you know? And I'd look under the corner of the rug, and there'd be dope there for me. And then hours would go by, and I wouldn't be able to leave that room, you know?
For how long? What's the longest you had to stay in that room?
Well, the whole time he was gone throughout the day, so like probably like 10 hours, and then he would come home, and I still couldn't leave because now he's in there with me, you know? And then he would do that to me. If I ran away or if I left, he would do that form of punishment to me, like keep me in that room for like a week.
So during this time with them, was there anything that they were telling these guys? I mean, he was offering you protection, right? From not only other pimps, but from John's too, I'm assuming. Mm-hmm. Was there anything that was off limits where, hey, you guys are not allowed to do this or do anything
Nobody
like this?
was allowed to hit me.
Okay.
That was something he would always threaten, you know. There was like a certain guy that was like, if you keep acting like this, you know, I'm going to let so-and-so watch you, you know.
Yeah.
And if you were put with that guy, then he would hit you with hangers, and he was like not nice, you know. So it was always the threat, like, if you don't do this, then you're going to get put with this type of person who's not going to care for you, who's not going to be nice to you, who's not going to do whatever, you know. And I always would find ways to like manipulate and get over whoever he would put with me as like a guard or whatever to take the money. And I would always find ways to like manipulate those people to where he'd be like, I can't put anybody with you, you know?
Yeah.
Because they would be giving me extra drugs or letting me take money on the side or like
How were you doing that?
I just would, you know, I learned really early how to play on people's ego and their, you know,
Yeah.
make them care about me. You know what I mean? It's like a survival tactic that you learn.
Yeah.
It's since I was younger. You know what I mean?
Got it.
Yeah.
So when you were going on these dates, was there anything that stands out from any of these dates that you felt really uncomfortable with? Or,
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
what kind of things did you have to deal with?
I met some of the most disgusting, most evil, dirty people you could ever imagine. You know, the type of things that guys would want to do. You know, there was this one guy who would come and see me once a month, and each time he saw me, it got worse and worse. Like the first time he saw me, it was like he had like $100 bills and keep putting all this money on the table. Like, if you let me do whatever I want, I'll give you, you know, more money. Keep putting money down. If he'd try to do something that was painful or hurt, he'd be like, "How about this?" And he'd put more money down. Eventually, my last date with that guy, the entire time he was there, he wanted me to lay there like I was a dead body, like not breathe. Like if he felt me breathe, he'd be like, "Oh," he'd get all mad now, you know. Just start over. Like he wouldn't like drape me over chairs like I was, you know, like limp, lifeless. While he did whatever, and I could tell, I knew that this guy, like his next step was probably going to be to kill me. It was like you knew that that's where he was like going with it. Like it was like a fantasy that he had. You know what I mean? It was just getting worse and worse and worse each time. The money was great, you know. And I remember that very last time I was so scared of that guy. I did whatever he said. Most of the time, that's the best way to get out of anything is just to do what people say.
Yeah.
The less of a fight you put up, the safer you're going to be. You know, you just do things to get it over with, to finish it, to be done with it. And the more you comply, the easier it is, right? And yeah, just people's weird fetishes and there's so much weirdness out there.
So how long were you working for this guy?
So I worked with him for probably about a year. And during that year, you know, I told you he taught me how to do Backpage. He taught me how to post ads. He was still fighting a case. And he would, like, instead of me using heroin...
Backpage is kind of like a...
You remember Backpage?
I've heard of it, yeah.
It's like Craigslist.
They don't have it anymore.
Right, they banned it.
Yeah.
They banned it. What was I saying? Oh, so instead of me doing heroin every day, he would buy like bottles of methadone pills. So he had me like just taking methadone for my opiate addiction. But now I'm like smoking crack all day long, you know? Yeah. So he got me in a more healthier place than I was previous to him. So I did that for about a year, and he taught me all the tricks to doing Backpage. And you know, he had all these girls working for him, and he ended up going to jail.
Yeah.
So he went to jail for his charges, and I continued to just do what he was doing with the same people he was doing.
Did they try to use you to testify or anything like that? Again, no, nothing like that.
No, his charges were like something
separate.
Before he met me, you
Got
know.
it.
I just kept doing exactly what he had taught me how to do, and I'm sending him money in jail.
Jeez.
And I'm having more money for myself now, you know.
You get to actually keep some of the money, right?
Yeah, and like it got into the point where the people thought that I was just still working for him type of thing, you know, because he had me doing all this stuff for him for so long while he was out that it was kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that. So
you use that to your advantage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So now I'm like, you know, staying in Philadelphia. I'm in all these different fancy hotels, and I'm just posting girls. I'm doing the same thing he was doing. And this is where my story gets, like, where I first, like, probably really attempted at recovery, right? So out of those girls, they would have regulars that would come. some of the regulars, there was 3 regulars that were Philadelphia police officers that would come and see these girls and go on dates with them.
What?
They would even bring us dope. Like if something happened and I couldn't.
Active police officers on duty.
Actual police officers.
On duty or just off duty, or did it matter?
It didn't matter.
Wow.
So any point, one of the girls was on a date with one of these police officers, and I had put the hotel room for her in her name, and she didn't know that she had a bench warrant.
Mm-hmm.
And just like with anywhere, they would do like
hotel sweeps
right,
stuff. Yeah.
right. So they come knocking at her door for her warrant, and she's on a date with a police officer.
Oh, Jesus.
And so she ends up, telling them that like I was holding her with fear tactics, and
You?
yeah, that I was doing all this stuff to her, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't know this at the time. I thought she just got arrested on a warrant and that was it. And she comes back out, and she's continuing to work with me, but she's working now with the federal agents.
Got it. So they're trying to go after you now for trafficking.
Yeah, they want whatever information, especially about these police officers. Right?
Yeah.
They charge me with all kinds of stuff, and the guy, the FBI agent was so cool. He would come and he would meet with me when I was in jail.
Yeah.
And he would sit with me and he'd talk to me for hours, about like everything that I had gone through, like what did I want to do, like, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And basically it was like, look, like I can help you with all this, and you could go to get yourself better, you could go to rehab, you can do all this stuff. But I had to testify against the police officers. And at this point, they had like all my laptops, all my, all my information. And so it was like really scary.
Were you reluctant to testify?
I was scared.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was scared. But I did it.
Good.
I did it. And then they sent me to California, to Delancey Street,
Mm-hmm.
for 2 years. If I didn't finish Delancey Street, I had to serve this hang over my head. And
What's Delancey Street?
so Delancey Street, there's one in San Francisco, one in LA, and there's some on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that this lady formed called Mimi Sober. People go there. It's like run by, there's no staff there. It's run by other people that have been there a long period of time. But it's a place that's well known by the courts. Like, they have like a 98% success rate for people
Yeah.
that have been like incarcerated for like 20 years, or, looking at life sentences. Like,
So it's a recovery place
kind of.
from everything, so to
But
speak.
you don't talk about recovery or anything like
Okay.
that. It's a place for people that like need to be like retrained. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Criminals, people that have been just constantly in jail. You don't talk about like your problems. You don't talk about drugs. You don't talk about addiction. You go there and like
It's not like an AA or NA.
nothing like that.
Yeah.
You're not even allowed to talk about stuff like
Okay.
that. You go there, and from the instant you're there, it's like a program, right? Like you work from 6 a.m. to, they have actual businesses, but you don't get, it's free to go there. You don't get paid anything. But it's attack therapy. So the way it works is like people will like scream at you all day long. What are you doing looking at that guy? You can't, there's all these rules. You can't wear makeup for 18 months. You can't pluck your eyebrows. It's like really, it's like to like train you, you know, like kind of military weird stuff. Anyway, I completed that and I met my husband there. And I was too afraid to go back to Pennsylvania for obvious reasons. And so I stayed here in California. And I'm sorry.
So when you testified, What happened with that situation? Was that a federal indictment? I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
So,
I mean, all I know is I went into this room, right? I went into a big room. There's like jurors in there,
hmm
and they just asked me a bunch of questions, and that was it. And then I was able to go.
and hopefully these men were charged, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
How many were there?
3.
3.
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
Do you know the outcome of that, like the time or anything?
I know the outcome for one. I think it was like 7 years or something like that.
Okay.
And it's crazy because even after I moved out here and changed my last name and all that stuff, I've had one of those officers friend request me on Facebook since then. Isn't that crazy?
That is insane.
It's really crazy. So yeah, when I met my husband and I stayed out here, I was sober for that 2 years in Delancey Street, and it was like the first time I had ever been sober in that whole time. Like I didn't even know how to like function. You know what I mean? When I went to Delancey Street, I was so far gone at everything I was doing. Like, I needed to learn how to like make a bed and be able to go to work. I didn't do any of that my whole life.
Yeah.
I never had a job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I stayed out here in California and I met my husband, and that's when I got introduced to meth. So I had that 2 years. I get pregnant. I'm having my daughter.
And how were you? You were introduced because he was doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He was sober when I met him.
Yeah.
And he, wanted to, he was like, oh, you got to try this. Like, oh, it won't hurt. Do it one time, blah, blah. And I was pregnant. I was like 6 months pregnant. That's how I relapsed. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
On a drug I had never done. And so I started doing, I remember I got high on meth while I was like 6 months pregnant.
Smoking meth.
Yeah.
Did you ever end up shooting it?
Yeah.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
I know it generally progresses, So you were smoking meth, and this was the entire time you were pregnant?
From about 6 months pregnant, yeah, until I was about 8 months pregnant. He ended up going back to jail, and then because he wasn't there and I didn't know anybody, I just didn't use anything, right?
Yeah.
I also want to add that I had started taking Suboxone.
Okay.
I had started taking Suboxone as a means for like cravings or whatever, so I could stay away from opiates.
Yeah.
And I was on it for that long period of time. So I'm taking that too while pregnant. And
can you explain a little bit to people listening what Suboxone is?
so Suboxone is a MAT medication. It's similar to methadone, except you can't get high off of it. It literally like coats the receptors on your brain that pick up on dopamine, opiates, right? And it tricks the receptors into thinking that there's something covering them. So it stops people from having cravings or withdrawals.
So you were using meth and Suboxone
right
at the same time?
Yeah.
And were you getting that high? Because
getting high on
separate.
meth.
Yeah, meth. It's not the opiate, right? So
if I didn't take the Suboxone, I would feel sick, right?
From the opiate addiction. Got it.
So, and I'm pregnant, yeah, and so I quickly, when I relapsed on that meth with him while I was pregnant, I quickly right away went like, oh, let's try crack. Let's get some crack out here. Let's get some this out there, and I'm using all this stuff.
Did that affect your pregnancy?
Luckily, no, it didn't. And I stopped using because he went to jail, so she was born with nothing in her system except for the Suboxone, right? But I was like messed up, taking Xanax and stuff for pregnant.
Yeah.
I just went like wild out here,
Mm-hmm.
I had my daughter, and then my husband, since the day we got married, he's been nothing but in and out of jail. And he's been like that his whole life, right? Mm-hmm. He shows me a whole new way to get money, I'm at the point where I would never prostitute again. Like I think I found my worth. Like I wouldn't want to do that anymore. And he shows me how to like forge keys, like make keys,
like shape
keys, break into
stuff.
people's vehicles or break into people's houses and like steal stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Steal cars, steal whatever's in their car. I look back at it now, it's like such a lame thing, you know what I mean? You don't know what's in a car, you know?
Yeah.
But he would especially do it when he would see tool trucks, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what he's out there doing right now. He's just driving around, stealing people's tools, breaking into cars.
I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah. So he taught me how to do all that, and that was my new get down, right? So now I have a baby, and I'm so crazy, and I'm gonna share this, and it's like just because I want to be real, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why out of everything this hurts me more than everything else I just talked about, but I'm like using meth and breastfeeding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that transfers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in your system.
Yeah. And my daughter is literally like, I could see it like affecting her. Like I would breastfeed. I didn't have to breastfeed her. You know what I mean? Like she wouldn't take a bottle, and no matter how hard I tried, and I would just like try to time it. Like, oh, I could smoke meth, and then or breastfeed her first, and then get high, or like, you know what I mean? Or people drink a beer and then they, you know. Yeah. So she would breastfeed, and I would see her. She would like have trouble going to sleep, trouble like not moving, you know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's crazy. I can't believe I did that.
I mean, as you said, you mentioned earlier all your inhibitions. You don't know right from wrong when you're dealing with these things.
There's no excuse for it at that point, because it's not like I can say like it was heroin and I needed it because I would get sick, right? You know what I mean? Meth is different. Like, I'd be fine either way whether I use it or not. I'm not gonna go through withdrawals. Like if you kind of do, like if you use it for a long period of time, you stop, like you crash and you get tired and you go through that, you know, through that. But it's easy. It's not like heroin, so I don't really have an excuse, you know.
Yeah.
Other than that, I was just selfish and I enjoyed it. I don't know how else to say it, you know. Yeah, so I'm just like continuing using meth and just taking Suboxone. I'm not using opiates. I'm just constantly on Suboxone, and I'm just following my husband down, you know. Now I'm like, I go to jail out here for robbery, breaking into somebody's car or doing something, and they catch me, you know, and turn into a fight, and then they charge me with strong arm robbery, like all, you know, stuff like that.
So it started off as a burglary, and then you get caught, and then you fight, and then it turns into a felony robbery.
And I'm pregnant with Ariel. I missed that part. I didn't tell you that part, but that's why I was pregnant. So I had just really tried meth, you know what I mean? And already I'm in jail, pregnant with her. Yeah. So my husband just keeps going in and out of jail, and I'm out here, and I don't know anybody but him, right? I don't have any family out here.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Where were you at?
Staying with his parents.
I mean, what area? Sorry.
Fremont.
Fremont. Okay. Now I got a weird question.
Go ahead.
What? I don't know how to ask this. So, what was, in your opinion, the worst drug that you used that made you do the worst things? I think you mentioned it earlier, Xanax, right?
Yeah.
Is that still meth? You didn't find yourself doing more crime or criminal activity during that?
So for me, it was always something and something, right?
Okay.
I never just took Xanax by itself. It was always like Xanax and meth.
Okay.
Xanax and methadone. But Xanax, I would take them and like feel like unstoppable, you know? I would take Xanax and just steal everything, break into people's homes. Why they were home, just walk in, you know? I didn't care. I thought I was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Untouchable. So I would say that was in forms of me getting in trouble.
Yeah.
That was the worst. And it became the worst for me because later in my story, I go through so much and I lose so much, and it's so painful. It's like Xanax is the only thing that stops me from feeling anything, so I just keep taking them.
Well, it kind of leads me to the second part of that question was, and the weird part of the question was, what was your favorite drug?
Xanax.
It was Xanax. Okay. The way it made you feel was the best. Wow. Okay.
It was like I would take a Xanax and I would get this like feeling.
Yeah. How long did that take?
About nothing. 20 minutes.
20 minutes you were feeling like on top of the world.
Could say anything, do anything, didn't have to care or think about anything. All those bad thoughts, all the bad things I would think about, I'd be free from that.
So when you were breaking into people's house where they were home, this is a home invasion then, right? And were you getting into like altercations with these people, or were you just sneaking around
I would just
stealing
sneak
stuff?
around and steal stuff.
And you never got arrested for that kind of stuff?
I didn't get arrested for home invasion, but I got arrested for a lot of other things. You know? Not everything I got caught for, but my stay here in the Bay Area since 2015, I've been arrested so many times out here, just so many times out here.
What was your experience like in jail? Like, what was the longest you stayed?
The longest I stayed was the last time I stayed.
This is county jail, not prison.
Yeah, I've never been to prison.
Okay.
Just always county. I would always do like, even in Philadelphia, right? I would do 6 months, get out, never report to probation, get absconding warrants, catch new charges, go back, out and out. You know, I would always, anytime I was on the street, I was just waiting to go back to jail. Like I would even time it so that like I had certain people in my life that I knew would put money on my books or, you know, stuff like that. Just prepared to go back.
Yeah.
Did you have any part of life?
What was your experience horrible in jail, or was it like, I've been here before, it's fine?
I've had a few bad experiences, but to be honest, the sheriffs at Santa Rita, you know, they were so used to seeing me, and they saw me at so many different stages in my life. They kind of, I don't want to say became my friends, but they just were so used to seeing me. I would go in there and I would pod work, and you know what I mean? It was like a you
were a trusted inmate.
It was like a retreat for me. You know what I mean? I knew I would go to jail and I'd be fine. You know, I'd have commissary and the COs were cool to me, you know.
Got it. Okay.
But I also had, I had some bad experiences too, but all of my own doing, you know.
Yeah, like fights and stuff like that, or?
No, I wasn't really a fighter, but I like, you know, I co-blued in jail, overdosed, stuff like that.
So if you don't mind talking about it, where were you getting the drugs in jail?
Like, that's like
it's all over the jail.
Thing in the world. Yeah. Everybody comes in, they just bring it, they just tuck it inside of them. You know, even in the jail, you know, at the med line, people just
tongue stuff. You know, they do body scans and stuff now. I'm assuming they weren't doing that back then.
Well, this was my last time there was just 2021, 22, 21. Yeah. Wow. And while I was there that last time, one of the girls in my cell died of a fentanyl overdose. She died of the fentanyl overdose. I was pod working, so I didn't know, but she, you know, I didn't relapse this last time in jail, but she was dead in that cell for like 6 hours, and nobody wanted to push the button because they didn't want to get in trouble. They wanted to like get their dope taken. So they knew she was overdosed, you know. She was a mom and everything. I was in there with her for like 7 months. It was tough.
I would imagine that's common.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't want to blow up their spot by, you know, even though they know it's going to save your life, you know.
Yeah, they don't care.
That's why they have, you know, the laws have changed with reporting. You know, you get high with somebody and they pass out or they're dying, you can call the police and you're not going to get criminally charged for doing dope with that person.
They say that, right? I guess they say that, but that doesn't excuse you if you have a warrant or you have other reasons that people, you know what I mean?
But I would think that it would help at least for you to make that initial phone call, even if you take off, you know, and just say, hey, there's somebody at, you know, the corner of this street and this street, and I think they're, you know, overdosing. You need to come quick and take off. I mean, that is better than doing nothing at all, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. If they're going to come in contact with them and they want to run people's names because it's clearly a death that needs to be investigated, right? We're not going to just, if somebody dies out there, they're just not going to walk away. We can't do that. So we're going to investigate. And in that process, we need to know who we're speaking with if they're still there. And then in the process of that, like you said, we run your name and you have a warrant. Unfortunately, you got to go to jail. And you could have been the person that saved that person's life, but
Right.
you know.
I don't think anybody in there, nobody I know anyway. I mean, you think they would like to do the right thing when they think cops. They just know they're going to jail. Even if they say
Yeah.
they just how they think.
hmm
Um,
You think the trust is not, period. It's just not there at all. Got it.
right. I don't think that's the police's fault or anything. I just
Yeah,
think
no,
if
I
you're
get
living
what
a
you're
certain
saying.
way, yeah.
Yeah.
My experience was, this is my first time now off of probation for years and years and years. But,
hmm
my experience has been anytime I've ever interacted with a cop
hmm
in Alameda County, I've gone to jail. Like,
Yeah.
no matter what. Even if it was like something like having a, tail light out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that was my own
Yeah.
doing.
Got it.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like, just, and I'm speaking from my own experience, I feel like if you want people to be honest with you, you got to be honest with them, and that's kind of how I try to do my job. I'll tell people sometimes, and I'm sure you've seen this and you know this, especially people who have addictions where they know they're going to get sick, they put their hand up and go, hey, I can tell you something if you let me go,
Oh, yeah.
and
For
it
sure.
happens a lot. And I have to tell them the truth. I can't say, okay, tell me, and then take them to jail still, right? I'm going to tell them the truth. Like, hey, you have a warrant. I can't let you leave.
Right.
If you want to give me this information and we can try to, work something out later, then, there's sometimes we can go down that road. But I'm not going to lie to them and say, okay, give me the information and then send them off to jail.
Right.
I won't do that.
Right.
Is it happening? Maybe. I don't know anybody that does that, but I get what you're saying. The trust there is probably shaky, especially when every time you get stopped or
Right.
it doesn't matter what it is, you feel like you're going to jail. So, I mean, so how do you navigate through that with police? I mean, you're clean, sober now, your dealings with the police and stuff like that.
I've been waiting for the day.
Yeah.
Since I've been off probation. I would just love one time. It hasn't happened, and the second they say, are you on probation or parole?
hmm
I can't wait to just be like, no.
No.
Because so many times I've had to say yes and
Yeah.
do the search and do the whole thing.
But at this point, do you feel like you would get more enjoyment saying, no, I'm not on it and you can't search my car and I don't want you to do it? Do you feel like that would make you
I
feel
think it would
better
just feel nice just
to be able to have that choice? But would you allow them to search your car if they wanted to?
If they wanted to, yeah.
Okay, so that is
It would
where
just
the
be
big,
nice to have the option.
of course, and
You
I
know?
get 100% what you're saying. So for me, I'm a police officer. Let's just pretend I'm not, right? I get pulled over by the police, and the police are like, "Hey, are you on probation?" No, absolutely not. Can we search your car? Absolutely. I have nothing in my car. You know what I mean? Because I feel comfortable that they're not going to see anything in my car that I need to worry about. That's me pretending I'm not a police officer. And the people that get off probation that we know are doing things still, and they get off probation, that's like they're, oh, you can't touch my car. Don't even look and don't even peek in my car. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? They kind of get that sense of like, oh no, I got them now where I want them. So that's why I wanted to ask you, because you've been on probation before and you know what it's like. So
It's been I guess it depends. I've had an experience where I had all three of my kids in the car. It was cold. It was
Yeah.
nighttime. In Livermore, driving to Target. And I think it was like one of my lights in the back was messed up or something, and they pulled me over. Now, I had been on probation at this point for like 2 years. I was almost off. I don't know. I feel like you could tell I'm sober. I speak different. But the second they run my background or anything like that, now you want to pull my kids out of the car and search.
Yeah.
Of course, I had to say yes. I was on probation. But in that moment, I would like to have been like, I'd like to say no. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? No,
Yeah,
I'm
no, I
not going to
get
pull my kids out of the cold so you can search the car.
Yeah.
Or even if I did say no and they still, had to, like, at least I know, I'm not doing anything wrong. I feel like I've always been, even now more so, respectful
Okay.
of the police. I understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
I understand that any cop that ever is going to pull me over
Mm-hmm.
and they run my name, of course they're going to.
A red flag is going to pop
Of
up,
course.
right? Yeah.
Of course. Right? So you have to take that and be understanding of that, They're doing their job, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I understand that. Yeah.
Well, what would you say to somebody that is currently dealing with what you have dealt with in the past, whether it be, having to choose, prostitution to feed their addiction, or somebody who's just starting out with their new addiction? Like, what advice would you give that person?
I would say that it'll always get worse. Like, that path only leads to death, right? It'll only ever get worse. And I think a lot of people tell themselves, like, oh, that's not me, right? Or they can look at my story and say, oh, well, she had it bad this way, so of course, or she ended up that way,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like that. I'm different. Why do you want anything that is going to have control over you? That has control over your ability to make your own choices. That has control over your ability to be happy and free,
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what addiction does. It doesn't give you a break. It doesn't let you can't take it off. You can't press pause. You can't say, here, let me put this on pause so I could be a good mom today. Let me put this on pause so I could show up at work today. You can't do that. It's always there. It's controlling everything, I don't think there's much you can say to somebody. Like, they're gonna do what they want to do. I feel like nobody could have said anything to me.
Yeah. So you feel like
I don't think
nobody is the exception.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Nobody's special.
Yeah.
Nobody's different.
Yeah.
We're all the same. There's nobody's like stronger. I mean, you might have more. It might take you longer to get to the bad part, right? But you'll get there. You know. Yeah, and I also feel like there's nothing that anybody could have said to stop me, or
Yeah.
It's like people need to experience things for themselves. You know what I mean?
I think that's important for you to say, because some people, I think, feel like somebody actually saying that there was nothing you were going to say to me at that time. And I get that. And now I'm not there anymore. So it's possible to not be in that position.
And that's what I try to do, even at my job now. When I'm working with clients, like, I know I didn't hear advice. You couldn't give me advice on what I should do or what you did or how bad your life was.
Yeah.
Like, nobody wants to hear that. They're not listening.
Yeah.
So I try really hard to just evoke change in them. Like, what would make you happier? How does this affect you? What's the, just ask questions that will make them think about their own life, and then they come up with the advice themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you come up with it yourself, you're more apt to do it, and you think it's your idea,
Yeah. When you imagine the better version of yourself, it helps you kind of visualize that change.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
You see somebody in a problem, and you're like, what do you think the solution is? Just something asking as simple as that. They're going to tell you what they think the solution is. They're going to find their own advice. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to come from them rather than me being like, you should do this. You shouldn't do that. Right?
So you're now currently working with recovering addicts?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you want to talk about where that's at, or do you not want to mention your job? No? Okay.
I can talk a little bit about it. I kind of want to talk about it because I feel like it's really important for me to explain to you the recovery aspect
Mm-hmm.
of my life, right? And how I got to that part.
Yeah.
I had spent so many years going in and out of jail, like we said, and in the meantime having babies, right? More
Yeah.
babies. But my addiction never went away. You know what I mean? My kids, I have my two older daughters, my my husband's parents
Mm-hmm.
took them from me
Okay.
because I was unsafe, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have anything to offer them. It was like I couldn't care for them properly. so they got guardianship. I was in and out of jail, so they always were like caring for them anyway, right? So I didn't have them, and that was like just a big empty void in my life, and I didn't know how to come back from that. I was homeless, just stealing stuff just to get by. I didn't know how to like come back from that and just like get sober and get my children back. It seemed like too big of a feat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so eventually my husband got out of jail and I had another baby, and we had gotten an apartment and stuff, and he did some things that got our house raided by the Hayward Police Department. And when they raided our house, they like destroyed it, like cut the mattresses open, like just destroyed the house.
Where was this at in Hayward?
In Hayward, it was at the Sycamore Apartments on Mission.
Okay.
They were looking for fentanyl.
Mm-hmm.
They had, I sold somebody 100 Xanax, and they went to go sell them at the 7-Eleven. Next thing you know, they come back with a SWAT team,
Wow.
And my husband ended up getting arrested because he had warrants. I remember that day, like it was, I had this makeup case. I just want to tell you this story because you're a police officer, and I feel like you'll get why it's like. So I had this makeup case, and fentanyl comes in all different colors, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had a MAC makeup case, and I had put my fentanyl in that and like compressed it down into this MAC makeup case.
Yeah.
And it was like a bluish color, And I remember the police were like, get down on the ground, put your, get down, face down. And they went through my pockets and they pulled out, and it was a good amount. It was, like an 8-ball of fentanyl. They pulled it out of my pocket.
Like a lethal amount.
Oh, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, way lethal amount. They pulled it out of my pocket and they placed it on the hood of the car along with my keys and everything else. And they said, she's clear. And they gave me all that stuff back.
Wow.
I remember being like, oh, I'm going to jail.
But there's no way they could possibly know that, right? I mean, somebody who's dealing with it, somebody that's in that lifestyle, who would think that? I personally wouldn't even think that. I mean, I'm pulling out makeup. I'm probably just going to put it to the side also.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably happened to me.
I remember I was so scared I was going to because it was just like a little clip on there that was going to break open, or you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm telling you about that raid because my husband ends up going to jail and I can't go back to that apartment because it's like destroyed.
Yeah.
Tossed up, everything's messed up. And we hadn't paid rent there in a long time, so like the landlord's looking at an opportunity to like get us out,
Yeah.
So I'm staying in and out of hotels, and I was at the Castro Valley. I don't know if it's called like the Days Inn or Anyway, I'm at that hotel up there,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm with my daughter. She's
On
a baby.
Castro Valley Boulevard?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She's a baby. She's probably like 9 months old, and my fentanyl addiction at this point is like so bad. Over the years I ended up going back to using opiates, and I found fentanyl, and it was like, wow, this is,
Yeah.
I don't have to shoot it. I could just smoke it.
Cheaper, less to
Yeah.
use. Yeah.
So I'm like staying in this hotel room, and I bought a bunch of Xanax from the Tenderloin and some fentanyl. I was in that hotel with another friend,
Mm-hmm.
and I put the baby in the bathtub, and I turned the water on, and she would like play in the bathtub, and I would go turn the water off, and it was not that deep, right? But I took some of those Xanax, and they were laced with fentanyl, and swallowing fentanyl and smoking it is two different things,
Yeah.
So I ended up overdosing and died. Like I was out on the floor.
Yeah.
The person that was there with me just left. They
The
just
baby
left.
in the tub and you possibly dead.
Yeah, I was dead for sure. The baby just floating in the bathtub. And so the water filled up so much it overflowed into the hallway of the hotel, and the maid could hear the baby crying and see the water on the floor, so she opened the door
Mm-hmm.
and found the baby and pulled her out of the bathtub. And she didn't even see me on the floor on the side of the bed.
Yeah.
So she took the baby to the front desk and called the police. And I guess the manager then found me when he came to the room on the floor dead, So they called the ambulance, they Narcan me. And I remember instantly when I came to, you get Narcan, like, it's like instant. You're instantly sober, instantly like,
Yeah.
sick, instantly like, whoa, Yeah, and they Narcan me and instantly put handcuffs on me. I had, in that room, I had like all that fentanyl, Xanax, I had a gun, I had, all this stuff around my baby.
Yeah.
Um,
How old was your baby?
9 months old. Yeah.
So
Just crawling
luckily,
around.
she lived through that, though,
Yeah.
right?
She was just floating on her back in the bathtub. So they charged me with felony child abuse. They charged me with all the different drugs in the room and stuff. And they take her
Yeah.
and put her in the custody of CPS. And I go to jail,
Yeah.
And I remember being, man, that withdrawal that I went through in that jail I'm so glad that I did it because I feel like I had to do it like that. But I didn't get Suboxone for like 6 days. I felt every bit of that fentanyl withdrawal, and it was 8,000 times worse than heroin withdrawal ever was. Like, I literally felt like I was gonna die.
At that point, do you feel like you deserve to feel that?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy you mentioned that you instantly you feel the sickness when you get Narcan, right? I've used Narcan on numerous people in my time as being a police officer, and I've had people wake up from being dead, complete dead,
Blue,
and
not
they
a
wake
breath
up
in their
mad
body.
at me because they're not high anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really upset with me, and it's crazy that you're saying that because that you know what it feels like to wake up from that. And did you have kind of that feeling, or was it more like, oh my God, my baby, where's my baby,
I think I also had the effects of the Xanax too, that was making me kind of like,
Okay.
so it wasn't as instant, but I have felt like that. I had been Narcan and woke up instantly like upset, mad, crying, why'd you do that? Like, that's crazy,
Huh.
But I instantly was sober enough to know that something horrible had happened, and the police were like, oh, look at this place, like, oh, look how you had the baby, da da da.
Yeah.
I'm like, please just let me see her, let me just see her. And they had me cuffed, and they brought her to the back of the window of the police car, just a little baby, and let me say goodbye. I was such a hot mess. So they charged me with felony child abuse, and I go to Santa Rita, and they give a protection order against the baby. And so that was the beginning of this. Like,
It's like a EPO, emergency protective order against, so you can't be around your kids anymore, right?
because I was like deemed unsafe,
Yeah.
for them to be around. So I felt completely hopeless, right? I thought that was it. Like, how do you come back from that,
Yeah.
It was actually such a blessing because with the CPS case, I had a plan. Like, they said, like, we want you to reunify with your child, so we're going to lay out a plan for you. And the plan looks like this. You're going to do this amount of jail time. You're going to do this amount of time in a rehab. You're going to do this amount of time.
Very structured.
Yeah. These are the steps you have to take to get your child back. And it still felt hopeless at the same time, but not so bad. So in jail, I don't know if it was losing my daughter. Also, I want to point out, I had reached a point in my addiction where I wasn't happy using.
Yeah.
I was miserable. I hated it. I would love to stop.
It was controlling you, and you didn't enjoy it.
I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
I would have loved to stop. My life was just, shit, and I didn't know how to ever be anything other than that.
Yeah.
I was hopeless. I never thought I'd be capable of anything other than that.
Yeah.
I could never see myself like carrying a regular job and like having a car, like just nothing. I looked at myself as being completely.
You felt like a prisoner.
That was for other
Right.
people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Success was for other people. I was dealt like a hand of shit, and that's what I was gonna have my whole life. You know what I mean?
Got it.
That kind of that pity card,
Yeah.
that feeling, right?
So this puts you on the right track now? Or
Yeah.
did
So
you? Okay.
so now I'm in jail, and I have like something a little to look forward to in the sense of like I want to get my child back, right? And I started to move a little bit different, and I met somebody that I was pod working with. Her name was Gabby. She had never been in trouble before. She had got like a wet and reckless, and then a DUI where she ran over a firefighter, broke his legs.
Huh.
And so she was serving, but she didn't have like a life of crime or drug abuse, you know. So she was serving a 4-year prison term she would have to do. And I was fortunate that it was just me and her in a bunk, and she had a different outlook and a different, you know. I wasn't like me just going to jail talking the same shit with the same people, bragging about how good I was or what I broke into or what I, you know, how good I was at all that other stuff.
Yeah.
It was different conversations, you know. And she's still my best friend today, yeah. So I served the time in jail. It was like 9 months. And then I got out. And I had that plan, that CPS plan, you know. I was at an SLE and I went to rehab, and I'm like, just kind of, I'm like wanting to stay sober, but I still have all the old life about me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, still think, you know, breaking into stuff is cool. You know, I'm still, everywhere I go, I'm like not just driving, I'm looking at licks. Oh, I could do this. Oh, I could do that. Like, that had become an addiction to me.
Yeah.
You know? All that stuff, getting into high-speed chases, you know, all that stuff was still appealing to me. And I probably, you know, I think that's an aspect of why people go back too, even if they get clean time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if that's all you know, you know, if the only friends you ever had were that way, and the only things you ever know are in that world, it's really hard to just like become somebody new. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I had an experience where I was going to church to see my children because my in-laws were caring for them, and when I would go to church, it'd be like an extra visit I would have outside of CPS. So I'd be able to see them. So I'm going to church, and one day I go to church, and the pastor says, "Is there anything I can pray for?" I didn't really not believe in God, but I didn't believe in like any specific thing. And he was like, anything we pray for? I'm like, yeah, can you pray for my addiction? And he was like, just praying. He's like, Lord God, fill her with your love. He's, you know, give her a feeling that she can't get from anything in this world. And I don't know what happened, but I do know what happened, and I don't care if anybody doesn't believe me, but I felt in that moment, like 100%, like I could audibly hear love. And I feel like my heart exploded in my chest, you know? And I just know that was God, you know what I mean?
It was.
It changed my life.
100% him.
It changed my life. Like, it changed me so much. It didn't just change, it changed everything about me. I remember, you know, after that happened, I'm walking up to people in church going, God is real. He's real. He's really real. And everybody's going like, we know. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, I thought they all saw a miracle, you know? Like, I heard it. I felt it. It was like an insane thing. And I walked